Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother Vicky. She had two siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, who looked up to Katrina as a role model. As children, Miranda would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup, admiring her older sister and wanting to be just like her. As the years passed, Katrina and Miranda formed a strong bond, becoming more like best friends than sisters. Katrina grew up in Mazni Park, Illinois, a suburban community outside the city, after her parents separated, and she lived with her mother. Those who knew Katrina described her as a kind, fun-loving person who cherished the holiday season and enjoyed giving humorous gifts to her friends and family. She was deeply involved in her church and had a strong desire to help others, always willing to lend a hand to those in need. Despite her happiness, Katrina longed to find love and thought she had found it when she met Todd Smith at a bar when she was 20 years old. Todd, a self-employed financial planner, had 3 daughters and worked from home. He met Katrina, and despite their differences, they clicked. Todd's flexible schedule allowed them to travel frequently. After 3 years together, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned a small wedding in a local park, and Katrina was thrilled about their future. She loved Todd's daughters and was eager to build a life with him. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was an excellent match for Katrina. They trusted him to take care of her and believed the couple was meant to be. After marrying, Katrina and Todd settled in Mazni Park and started their new life together. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother and said she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, she mentioned she would visit for dinner on October 24th and had news to share. Vicky suspected that something was amiss, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Before ending their phone call, Vicky promised Katrina that she would cook her favorite meal, chicken and dumplings. Tragically, Vicky would never get the chance to keep that promise. Days later, Katrina vanished, and Vicky would never lay eyes on her again. On October 23rd, at 5 p.m., Todd, Katrina's husband, called 911 to report her disappearance. He told the dispatcher that Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he had been trying to reach her for hours without success. When he drove to the house, he found it empty. Katrina's siblings, Miranda and Chad, were alarmed when they heard the news. Chad, who was undergoing military training in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the evening of the 23rd, a concerned citizen notified the police about an abandoned vehicle near Rock River. The caller reported that the car was not parked on the road, but rather in an easement, suggesting it had been hastily abandoned. When authorities arrived to investigate, they ran the license plate and identified it as belonging to Katrina Smith. Upon inspecting the vehicle, the officer found no signs of a struggle or any trace of Katrina herself. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was adamant that her daughter's disappearance was a clear indication of foul play when she learned that Katrina's car had been abandoned in an unfamiliar area. It was the only logical explanation to Vicky. If Katrina's car was found in that location, someone must have taken her and left the car there. Following the discovery of her car, Katrina's case was officially categorized as a missing person, and the search efforts intensified significantly. On October 12th, at 11 p.m., the police took Todd Smith in for a formal interview at the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he last saw his wife Katrina on October 10th, not October 22nd. He stated that Katrina had come home briefly to do laundry in preparation for a big job interview the following day. According to Todd, while the laundry was in progress, Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase and returned home at 8:30 p.m. Todd reported that Katrina briefly returned home before leaving again to make one last stop. She had told him she needed to complete an errand before returning to the house she was watching for a friend. The next day, after Katrina was declared missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, he broke down in tears as he begged for anyone with information about her whereabouts to come forward. As the search for Katrina continued, search teams composed of officers and volunteers worked tirelessly to find her. They focused their efforts on a nearby park, where Katrina's car had been abandoned, hoping to find evidence or clues about her disappearance. When Katrina's brother Chad arrived in Illinois from his army training in Oklahoma, he joined the search for his missing sister at the park. With his military background, Chad took charge of the search party. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated their efforts to ensure a thorough search. As the search continued, the officers employed a methodical approach, using dogs and walking in straight lines to cover as much ground as possible and detect any potential evidence, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Katrina's mother Vicky focused on spreading awareness about her daughter's disappearance. She posted missing person flyers at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts throughout the town, hoping to reach as many people as possible. Despite her overwhelming grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky was determined to keep searching for Katrina, even if she couldn't participate in the physical search herself. Todd, Katrina's husband, was overcome with emotion during this difficult time. Chad, trying to be supportive, urged Todd to stay strong and focused on finding Katrina. He stood by Todd's side, sympathetic to his brother-in-law's grief. Meanwhile, the police investigation turned up some disturbing clues. An officer found Katrina's purse near her abandoned car, and as he searched further down the road, he discovered more of her belongings, including her cell phone and bloody towels. It was clear that someone had deliberately discarded Katrina's possessions as they drove away from her car. Unfortunately, the police still had no idea where Katrina was, but they feared the worst. The recovered items were sent to the crime lab for analysis, and the police awaited the results with bated breath. As the police searched for clues, they explored every aspect of Katrina's personal life to understand what might have led to her disappearance. They wanted to know if she had any relationships outside her marriage, was involved in gambling or drugs, and what her daily routines were like. To gather this information, they interviewed her friends and family. Everyone they spoke to described Katrina as a kind, responsible person who always put her duties first and avoided anything risky. Her loved ones said she was dedicated to her job and had a strong work ethic. They also reported that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. The people who knew Katrina described her as a loyal partner and a hard worker who always did the right thing. During the investigation into her disappearance, a woman came forward with an interesting clue. She claimed to have seen a blue car, similar to Katrina's, parked on a bridge over Rock River on the night she vanished. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it. Although the witness couldn't describe the person's gender or race, her tip led the police to suspect that Katrina might have been a victim of foul play and ended up in the river. However, they still needed concrete evidence to support this theory. The police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, looking into potential motives and suspects. Despite seeming to have a happy marriage, her husband Todd was still a person of interest. As the authorities knew that hidden conflicts or secrets can exist in any relationship, their inquiry led them to a teenager in town who had previously shown an unhealthy obsession with Katrina. Earlier in the year, Katrina had confided in friends about the boy's behavior, including allegations of voyeurism, such as spying on her through her bedroom window. This had made Katrina increasingly anxious at the time. Although the boy's activities had stopped when he left for college, the police wondered if he might have returned and resumed stalking Katrina. They devoted significant resources to finding him. 3 days into the search, crucial clues were discovered on Katrina's cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab. The phone proved to be a crucial source of evidence for the investigators. By examining Katrina's cell phone records, they uncovered a wealth of information, including her text messages, call logs, pictures, videos, and GPS location data. This information enabled the police to reconstruct a more accurate timeline of Katrina's activities. The investigation revealed that Katrina was having an affair with a co-worker, Guy Gabriel. Initially, they had met after work and developed a connection that eventually turned romantic. However, a background check on Guy Gabriel exposed a troubling history of domestic violence. Additionally, the detectives found text messages in which Guy Gabriel demanded that Katrina leave her husband Todd for him. Given Guy Gabriel's violent past and his messages to Katrina, he became the top suspect in her disappearance. The police suspected that Guy Gabriel might have reacted violently towards Katrina because she refused to leave her husband for him. When Katrina's family discovered her affair with Guy, they were shocked and disbelieving. The seemingly perfect couple, Katrina and Todd, had hidden a dark secret. The news of Katrina's infidelity devastated Todd, who was unaware of the affair until the police investigation. Guy Gabriel was questioned by the police at the station, and although he appeared nervous, he admitted to the affair, but denied any involvement in Katrina's disappearance. He claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During the investigation, the police uncovered an incident that had occurred 2 weeks before Katrina's disappearance. Witnesses reported that a black Volkswagen Jetta had sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, causing a scene during lunchtime. A mysterious driver in a VW Jetta threw a stack of flyers out of the car's sunroof, scattering them among the employees gathered outside. The flyers contained a derogatory remark about Katrina and Guy Gabriel's relationship, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. Meanwhile, the police questioned Katrina's hairstylist, who shared that Katrina had confided in her about feeling unsafe and threatened. Katrina had even considered buying a gun for protection and had become paranoid about being followed. She had gone so far as to take her phone to a store to check for a tracking device, suspecting that someone was monitoring her movements. At the police garage, crime scene investigators searched Katrina's car for clues and used a special chemical called luminol to detect blood. They found a large amount of blood in the trunk. Meanwhile, a firefighter pulled a mysterious object from the water, which turned out to be a severely decomposed female body. The body was difficult to identify due to its condition. At the medical examiner's office, dental experts compared the body's teeth to Katrina Smith's dental records and confirmed that the body belonged to her. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Katrina's family was devastated by the news, and her mother, Vicky, was in disbelief. The police cleared the teenage boy who had been allegedly stalking Katrina as a suspect after verifying his alibi. The police then turned their attention to Guy Gabriel, Katrina's boyfriend outside of her marriage. Guy provided an alibi, claiming he was at work during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder. His managers and co-workers corroborated his alibi, and the police cleared him as a suspect. Although Guy was no longer a suspect, the police asked for his perspective on who may have hurt Katrina. Guy revealed that Katrina's husband, Todd, exhibited controlling behavior and encouraged Katrina to leave her marriage. The police investigated Katrina's marriage and discovered several concerning details, including Katrina's desire to divorce Todd, her meeting with a divorce attorney, and her separation from Todd. The police suspected Todd of being behind the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion grew stronger when they discovered that Todd had test-driven a black Jetta, similar to the car involved in the flyer incident, around the same time it occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her murder and was already in custody, they were shocked and devastated. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, feeling physically ill at the thought that Todd could be responsible for her daughter's murder. The police also discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, providing a potential motive for the crime. Katrina was the sole breadwinner for her family since Todd was unemployed. The police suspected that Todd might have motive to kill his wife, as he would gain access to their funds if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage with brays of blood on it, which led them to believe it might be the murder weapon. The autopsy revealed that Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting a bat was used. A DNA test confirmed that the blood on the bat was Katrina's, linking the bat to the crime. The police also found a clean area under the car, which seemed suspicious. Further examination revealed that the bloodstains matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, Todd was arrested and charged with her killing, bringing relief to her family. At his trial, the prosecution presented evidence that Katrina had recently visited a divorce attorney, indicating marital problems. On the night of the murder, Katrina had gone to Todd's house to do laundry for a job interview the next morning. The prosecution alleged that Katrina told Todd their marriage was over, triggering his violent reaction. They claimed that Todd grabbed a baseball bat, killed Katrina in the garage, and then disposed of her body by throwing it off a bridge at Rock River. The jury found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sarah Pappenheim. Sarah Pappenheim was born on January 30th, 1997 in Minnesota to Donnie Odegaard and Jerry Pappenheim. She was their second child, with an older brother named Josh, with whom she shared a close bond that grew stronger as they grew older. In the second grade, Sarah's family moved from Minneapolis to Redding, California. She graduated from Foothill High School in 2015, where she was not only a diligent student, but also an enthusiastic member of the school band, playing the drums. Sarah had a deep passion for music, particularly foreign music and drumming. She was a skilled drummer and regularly participated in weekly jam sessions at various Redding venues. Her drumming skills stood out, and she was a rare female presence on stage. At 18, Sarah returned to her native Minnesota with her mother and brother, following her parents' divorce. She continued to play drums at various Minnesota venues, which eventually led her to meet renowned blues guitarist and singer Bernard Allison. He was impressed by her performance, and Sarah began to occasionally perform at his concerts. By 19, Sarah had become a local blues sensation, earning the nickname Ronald McDonald due to her striking, wide smile. Josh's life was deeply affected by his parents' divorce. He had been grappling with depression and mental health issues for years. Those close to him at the time had no idea how desperate his situation would become. On an ordinary day, in February 2016, Donnie received an unexpected visit from the police. When she opened the door, they asked about her relationship to Josh Pappenheim. After identifying herself as his mother, the officers delivered devastating news that would forever change her life. Tragically, 20-year-old Josh had taken his own life, leaving his loved ones reeling from the loss. As Donnie would later recall, Sarah cried so intensely that her tear ducts dried up. Under Josh's obituary, her message still remains, promising to love her son forever. Sarah and her brother Josh were extremely close. She was devastated by his passing and the fact that he had taken his own life. Rather than letting the pain overwhelm her, Sarah decided to pursue psychology to help people struggling with mental health issues in the future. Sarah had been in touch with Nico Carson, a guy from the Netherlands, for a while. She decided to move there and enroll at Erasmus University in Rotterdam, where she began studying psychology. Nico, being a native speaker, helped Sarah navigate her loss, assisted her with her studies, and supported her in any way possible. Although Sarah was dedicated to her studies and work, her passion for music never faded. She reached out to Bernard Allison, a fellow musician and friend she had performed with in the past, to share her excitement about finally saving up enough money to buy the drum kit she had always dreamed of owning. In January 2017, Bernard Allison went on tour in Europe with his band. On Sarah's 20th birthday, January 30th, she attended his concert in Germany with Nico, and as soon as Bernard saw her, he invited her on stage to play the drums alongside him, just like they used to do. Sarah lived in a third-floor apartment in a complex just a mile from the university in Rotterdam. As 2018 drew to a close, she was looking forward to spending Christmas back home in the United States. Her flight was scheduled about a week before New Year's Eve. But everything took an unexpected turn on December 12th. Doni Odegaard's heart sank when she saw a police officer standing on her doorstep, a sight that brought back painful memories of 2016, the year her son passed away. As the officer began questioning her about her daughter, her legs started shaking uncontrollably. She instinctively knew what the officer was about to tell her, yet she couldn't bring herself to accept the devastating news. The officer, convinced that he was speaking to Sarah Poppenheim's mother, delivered the heartbreaking news. Her daughter had passed away. Doni felt like she'd been punched in the gut. The news was too much to bear, and she lost consciousness. This tragedy was all too familiar. She had lost her 20-year-old son just a few years ago, and now her 21-year-old daughter was gone too. The girl lived in a third-floor apartment in a complex where most residents were students. For the past year, Sarah had rented an apartment there and shared it with Joel Schelling, a fellow student and talented double bass musician like herself. Their shared passion for music brought them together. Sarah was an outgoing and cheerful person, unlike her roommate Joel, who had a short temper and occasionally quarreled with her. Despite his difficult behavior, Sarah was loyal and didn't want to abandon him to his problems, possibly because she remembered what had happened to her brother. 6 days before her death, Sarah confided in her friend Adam Pryor in Wisconsin, expressing fear of Joel, who had told her he intended to harm 3 people he disliked. A couple of days before she passed away, Sarah also spoke to her mother on the phone, sharing her growing concerns about Joel's behavior. Her mother advised her to find a new place to live immediately and to keep her distance from Joel until she moved out. On Wednesday, December 12, 2018, at 12:20 p.m., Sarah and Joel got into a loud fight at their apartment, which prompted their next-door neighbors to call the police. When the police arrived, they found Sarah lying on the floor, unconscious and suffering from multiple stab wounds. Despite attempts to revive her, Sarah sadly died. Joel, her roommate, was not present at the scene. It seemed he had fled, and the police launched a search for him. After questioning neighbors on the same floor, the officers discovered that Joel had hastily left the apartment, taking a large double bass with him. This unusual detail was included in the description sent out to authorities less than 2 hours after the crime. The police eventually tracked down 23-year-old Joel Schelling at Eindhoven train station, about 60 miles from Rotterdam. As it turned out, Joel was heading to visit his parents, who lived in Eindhoven. During the train ride, he called his mother and confessed to killing Sarah. The judge ordered Schelling to be held for 14 days to determine if he suffered from mental health issues. An autopsy revealed that Sarah's body had 27 stab wounds, including several in her neck, abdomen, and back. 2 days after Sarah's death, Doni Odegaard traveled to the Netherlands to arrange for her daughter's body to be returned to their home country. This required raising $40,000, which the family was able to do with the help of supportive individuals. Doni's first priority was to discover if Sarah had reported to the police that her roommate was planning to attack 3 people. It turned out that Sarah had not contacted the authorities. However, she had reached out to social workers who assist people with psychological difficulties. These social workers visited Schelling and found him to be calm, straightforward, and coherent in his answers, giving them the impression that he was normal. The next day, Sarah had to contact social services again. This was because Schelling, in a rage, started hitting himself with a hammer and threatened to harm several people soon. Sarah was worried that Joel would discover she had reported him to the authorities. However, the social worker didn't have time to respond to Sarah's second request because she had already died. Schelling was accused of causing Sarah Poppenheim's death. He admitted his guilt, but claimed he didn't recall taking her life. He remembered the fight, but when he came to, he was already in the shower, cleaning himself. The trial began in March 2019. Sarah's mother, Doni Odegaard, attended every hearing, relying on an interpreter to understand the proceedings. During the trial, Schelling claimed he suffered from delirium and heard voices in his head. When the judge asked Schelling if the voices in his head had told him to fight Sarah, he said he didn't know and couldn't recall. He also claimed he didn't remember what sparked the fight between them. Before the verdict was announced in December 2019, medical experts testified that Schelling suffered from multiple mental health disorders and required long-term treatment. However, they concluded that he was still responsible for taking Sarah Poppenheim's life. The experts reasoned that Schelling remembered the start of the fight and physically struggling with Sarah, and he had the ability to choose whether to stop or grab the knife. He chose the latter and therefore should be punished. The prosecutor requested a 10-year prison sentence for Schelling, but the Rotterdam judge sentenced him to 6 years in prison, followed by involuntary commitment to a psychiatric hospital. The court explained that it rejected the prosecutor's 10-year sentence request due to Schelling's youth and his significantly impaired mental state at the time of the crime. As a result, Schelling cannot be fully held accountable for the proven facts of the case. The court has stated that, due to the seriousness and unpredictability of the crime, as well as the suspect's severe psychological disorders, there is a high likelihood of him committing another violent crime. The suspect requires long-term treatment and supervision in a clinical setting for his chronic conditions. The court views the psychiatric detention as a form of punishment for Schelling, who has expressed willingness to undergo treatment for depression and other disorders. Schelling will remain in detention for treatment until the court, which will review his progress every 2 years, decides that he is well enough to be released. Additionally, the court has ordered Schelling to pay €68,700 in compensation to Sarah's family. Doni Odegaard was outraged by the sentence, claiming it was not justice. In her opinion, the minimum sentence in America should have been at least 10 years. She pointed out that Schelling could have faced life imprisonment or even the death penalty, ensuring he would never have the chance to commit such a heinous crime again. Her main concern was that Schelling might be released on parole in just 4 years, a prospect she vowed to fight against, using every means at her disposal to keep him incarcerated for as long as possible. An investigation was also conducted into the social workers Sarah had contacted. The conclusion was that they were not culpable, as they lacked the necessary expertise to identify the disorders Schelling was subsequently diagnosed with. Friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Timothy Jones Jr. Timothy Jones Jr. and Amber Kaiser, a divorced couple, had 5 children together, all under the age of 9: Mara Grace, Elias, Xavier, Nathalie, Gabriel Asher, and Elaine Marie. The family lived in Lexington, South Carolina. When they first met as teenagers, Amber was attracted to Timothy's world and felt a strong connection to him and his way of life. They got married young, and while Timothy pursued his education in Mississippi, Amber dedicated herself to being a homemaker. Timothy grew up with a mother who struggled with schizophrenia, which gradually worsened over time. She eventually needed constant care. When Timothy's father was just 20 years old, he took Timothy to live with his grandmother. There, Timothy was exposed to a troubled environment marked by domestic violence, substance abuse, and alcoholism. Despite a tough upbringing, Timothy displayed a natural aptitude for numbers, effortlessly solving math problems, and disassembling and reassembling computers with ease. However, his life took a dramatic turn when he entered adolescence and began experiencing auditory hallucinations. At the age of 10, Timothy started using drugs and drinking excessively, and at 15, he suffered a traumatic brain injury in a car accident. This injury affected his frontal lobe, the area of the brain responsible for regulating impulses, which is also linked to psychopathic tendencies. Following the accident, Timothy's behavior became increasingly erratic and stubborn. He grew intensely jealous of his father, feeling threatened by anyone who had a relationship with him, believing they were taking away his father's attention. Over time, Timothy became convinced that his father didn't love him and harbored a deep-seated fear of abandonment. After completing high school, Timothy aspired to join the elite U.S. Navy SEALs, but he lacked the required athletic talent and discipline, leading to his eventual expulsion from the training program due to substance abuse. In 2001, Timothy Jones Jr. was sentenced to a year in a labor camp at an Illinois state prison. When he was released, he appeared to have undergone a significant transformation, with religion becoming a central guiding force in his life. At an amusement park in Chicago, he met Amber, the woman who would become the mother of his children, and they quickly decided to get married, in accordance with the rigid expectations of Timothy's Pentecostal church. At the time of their marriage, Amber was 19 years old, and Timothy was 22. Soon after, Amber became aware of the church's strict rules, which prohibited women from cutting their hair, wearing pants, makeup, or jewelry. Timothy believed in the principle that women should submit to their husbands and have many children. Timothy was a devout individual who dedicated his life to the church. Despite many people warning him against taking the Bible too literally, he remained committed to his faith. He and his spouse had 3 children in quick succession: Mara, Elias, and Nathan, each born a year apart. As their family grew, they relocated to Mississippi, where Timothy earned a degree in computer science and engineering from the state university with highest honors. Throughout this period, Timothy Jones Jr. successfully balanced his marital life, parenthood, and various jobs. His family was incredibly proud of him, recognizing Timothy as a remarkable genius with a bright future. Timothy's life seemed to be progressing smoothly. He secured a job at Intel as a computer chip manufacturer, which his wife Amber saw as a means to a better life. Having lived in student housing in Mississippi, they aspired to raise their 3 children in a larger house and even considered hiring a nanny. Timothy's dream of living on a farm led him to buy a rundown trailer on a dirt road in Red Bank. He purchased animals to raise, and Amber stayed at home to care for the kids and the animals. The problem was that Amber was isolated, with no car and no driving skills in this rural area. By 2012, they had 2 more children, and problems started to surface. Timothy questioned whether he was the father of their youngest daughter, Elaine. He also wanted Amber to homeschool the kids. Despite her limited education, she only finished high school. Amber, who already felt lonely with no nearby family, and her husband's family living far away in Mississippi, felt even more inferior to her intelligent and educated husband. Tensions rose when Timothy accused Amber of having an affair with their neighbor. Their marriage began to fall apart, and they considered getting a divorce. Timothy wanted sole custody of the children, so he visited a therapist and asked for a statement to give to his divorce lawyer, claiming he was capable of raising the children on his own. Amber, who didn't have a lawyer and was unsure of what to do, eventually decided it would be best for the children to stay with their father, as she was unemployed and lacked education. As the primary breadwinner, Timothy was granted full custody, and Amber was allowed to visit the children regularly. She left her husband and children behind. However, Timothy's mental state began to deteriorate. Haunted by his failed marriage, he started using drugs and drinking again, struggling with the voices in his head. He became easily provoked over minor issues, and Amber reported that he had once beaten her in front of their children until she lost consciousness. As Timothy struggled to balance work and taking care of the children, he hired a nanny service despite his own instability. The first two nannies observed that his home was spotless, and he was dedicated and attentive to his children. Later, he switched services and hired 17-year-old Crystal, who had a young daughter of her own. Timothy soon began an affair with the nanny and attempted to convert her to his religion, insisting she adopt the church's customs, such as wearing long dresses, growing her hair out, and submitting to his authority. When Crystal refused, their relationship began to fall apart. Crystal later stated that Timothy was extremely harsh towards his children, making them stand on their toes for hours, because he believed punishment was necessary to purify their sick bodies. She left after catching him trying to hit her young daughter. After Crystal's departure, Timothy hired another nanny who noticed a significant change in him. His previously clean home was now filthy, filled with trash, dirty clothes, and infested with cockroaches. Over time, Timothy Jones Jr. became increasingly violent, punishing his children daily. He started feeding them only oatmeal throughout the day, limiting them to one meal. In August 2014, the nanny contacted South Carolina's social services to report the neglect and abuse in Timothy's home. She described the lack of food and the physical abuse the children suffered. The abuse was so severe that the teachers at the elementary school, attended by the older children, had previously reported it to the agency months earlier. The agency had required Jones to sign a written promise never to mistreat or hit his children again, as they often arrived at school with bruises. On the afternoon of Thursday, August 28, 2014, Timothy picked up his 3 older children from elementary school and his 2 younger ones from the nanny around 7 p.m. Timothy became enraged about some broken outlets in their mobile home. He questioned his 6-year-old son Nathan about the damage, and when Nathan denied any involvement, Timothy forced Nathan to do push-ups, squats, and other exercises repeatedly, while whipping him with a belt whenever he slowed down. Amber, Timothy's ex-wife, called to talk to her kids. During the call, Nathan told his mom about the punishment he got for breaking some outlets, saying it was an accident. Timothy got angry, ended the call, and told Amber to stop protecting Nathan. After hours of being punished, Nathan was extremely tired, dehydrated, and begging for it to stop. He passed out, and Timothy carried him to bed, leaving him alone without water or any help. Phone records show that Amber tried to call back 8 more times, but Timothy didn't answer. Around 1 a.m., Timothy searched for a specific scene from the movie American History on YouTube, even though he knew Nathan was already unconscious. At around 1 a.m., Timothy took his 8-year-old daughter Mia to a local store to buy 10 packs of cigarettes. When they got back home, Timothy grabbed Mia and started choking her. Then he went to his 7-year-old son Elias and did the same thing. After that, he took off his belt and went to his 2-year-old son Gabriel and 1-year-old daughter Elaine, putting the belt around their necks and pulling until they stopped breathing. Seeing that the kids weren't moving, Timothy took their sheets and blankets, wrapped each of them separately, and put them in the back seat of his car. On Friday, August 29th, Jones's father called him at 7:43 a.m., but got no response. Later, at 9:36 a.m., the nanny tried calling Jones and finally got through to him on her second attempt. She asked if he would be taking the younger kids to daycare, and he told her not to worry, saying he would take them the following week, explaining that they were currently out of town and would return by Tuesday. Between noon and 2 p.m. that day, Jones drove around, searching online for out-of-state drugs. At 1:27 p.m., he was near Alabama, but he ignored his grandmother's multiple calls, totaling 23 attempts between 3 and 5 p.m. During this time, Jones also searched online for tobacco shops in Alabama and Mississippi, as well as campsites in South Carolina. His location was recorded in Georgia at 8:04 p.m. The next day, August 30th, his grandmother continued sending messages, asking why he wasn't responding to her calls. Then, on August 31st, his phone's location was recorded in Red Bank, New Jersey, at 10:08 a.m. Jones spent the day searching the internet for camping stores, RV parks, and landfills in South Carolina, as well as animal services. He also looked up 2 songs at 4:54 p.m. Timothy Jones Jr. received a reminder from the nanny to bring diapers when he dropped off Gabriel. An hour later, he responded, informing her that he had left South Carolina with the children to start anew, and asking her to clean the mobile home, giving her permission to take whatever she wanted from the belongings he left behind. On September 1st, Timothy was driving from one place to another. The next morning, at 10:35, he searched online for information on disposing of bodies in landfills, making muriatic acid, and camping near countries with no extradition laws, as he was facing legal issues and considering his escape options. Throughout the day, he received updates from the nanny, who had cleaned the mobile home. His boss at Intel also messaged him, inquiring about his work attendance, around 6 p.m. On the morning of September 3rd, a coworker called him twice, but Timothy did not respond. Later, surveillance video captured Timothy at a well-known store, purchasing a saw, muriatic acid, garbage bags, a 5-gallon bucket, and goggles at 3:37 a.m. He also searched online for information about his missing children. On September 4th at 6:33 a.m., Timothy Jones Jr.'s location was tracked to Charleston, South Carolina, where he deposited a check for $3,508 at a bank. The next day, on September 5th, his phone was briefly turned on in Louisville, Georgia, but his exact location was not recorded. On the morning of September 6th, Jones placed the decomposing bodies of his children in black plastic garbage bags and abandoned them in a clearing along a rural forest road in Alabama, which was recorded at 9:14 a.m. The bodies had been in the back seat of his vehicle since August 29th. Later that day, at around 7 p.m., Jones was stopped at a traffic checkpoint in Smith County, Mississippi. A police officer approached his vehicle and noticed a strong, unpleasant smell coming from inside, as well as apparent bleach stains on the carpet that suggested a recent cleaning attempt. When questioned about the whereabouts of his children, Jones initially denied having any children, then claimed he had 3 children who were in South Carolina. The officers asked for the phone numbers of his father, grandmother, and ex-wife to verify the children's safety, and after making the calls, they promptly arrested Jones. Jones felt overwhelmed with sorrow and anger when he caught one of his sons playing with an electrical outlet. In a fit of rage, he grabbed the boy by the neck and choked him until he lost consciousness. Later, he used a belt to discipline his other son, as his hands were too large to fit around the boy's neck. When his eldest daughter walked into the room and saw what was happening, Jones grabbed her and choked her with his hands until her face turned purple. After the incident, Jones put his son Nathan to bed, only to discover him dead when he checked on him later. During the investigation, Jones explained that he killed his children because he heard voices in his head, leading him to believe they were plotting against him. He also thought that they would be better off in heaven. During his attempted escape, Jones drove through the southeast with the bodies of his 5 children hidden under blankets in his car. He eventually dumped their bodies in a remote Alabama forest before being arrested by chance during a routine traffic stop in Mississippi. Timothy claimed it was an accident and said the punishment he imposed on Nathan went too far, leading to the boy's death from exhaustion caused by the strenuous exercises. When he found Nathan lifeless in his room, Timothy was overcome with panic and decided to kill all his children. The pathologist found it difficult to determine the exact cause of Nathan's death, but suggested that the excessive exercise had weakened him so much that it would have taken minimal force to end his life. The investigators were puzzled as to why Timothy didn't call for emergency services if he genuinely believed it was an accident. Instead, he attempted to hide and dispose of the children's bodies on the same day. Timothy eventually agreed to take the investigators to the location where he had hidden the bodies. On September 11th, authorities recovered the remains of Timothy Jones's 5 children. The evidence collected from his car was handed over to South Carolina authorities and included personal items such as family photos, children's clothing, drawings by the children, letters written by their mother to the children, Timothy Jones's university diploma, and his passport. Additionally, handwritten notes by Jones were found, detailing to-do lists that included instructions on how to dispose of bodies, including grinding bones into powder or small pieces, and burning them. The lists also mentioned supplies needed, such as camping gear, gasoline, and muriatic acid. Upon his arrest on September 13, 2014, Jones was placed in a special isolation cell, away from the general prison population. Since then, he has undergone evaluation by various mental health professionals, including psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, and forensic experts. Although the experts' opinions differ, some have diagnosed Jones with schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, or personality disorder. These experts suggest that Jones's mental state at the time of the crime might have been exacerbated by his drug use and a traumatic brain injury he suffered at the age of 15, which could have contributed to an underlying psychotic condition. In late May 2019, Timothy Jones Jr. was tried for a crime considered one of the worst murders in South Carolina's history. The trial featured weeks of intense testimonies and evidence presented against him. After only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury delivered a verdict on June 13, 2019, sentencing Jones Jr. to death. Currently, he is being held in solitary confinement at a correctional institution, where he wears a green jumpsuit that distinguishes him as a death row inmate. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rosanna Galliano. Rosanna Galliano was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in the late 1970s. She was the youngest child, with 2 older brothers, Oscar and Gustavo, and a sister, Monica. Her parents were Raldo and Graciela. While details of her childhood and teenage years are scarce, it's known that she finished high school in the late 1990s. During this time, her father, Raldo, worked as a mechanic. In early 2001, Jose Arce visited Raldo's workshop, where he met Rosanna. Born on November 22, 1948, Jose had spent over 30 years living abroad, including time in Greece and the United States, where he was imprisoned for 4 years for drug trafficking. He returned to Argentina in 1996, owning 8 properties in a posh area of Buenos Aires. Jose and Rosanna started dating quickly after meeting at her father's shop, where he brought his vintage car for repairs. Despite their significant age difference, Jose appeared financially stable, thanks to his mother Elsa, who still lived in the United States. When 52-year-old Jose proposed to 22-year-old Rosanna, her mother Graciela expressed concerns about their age difference. Jose argued that age was not an obstacle to love, and Graciela turned to Rosanna for reassurance. Rosanna confirmed her desire to marry him in a whisper. The couple got married on November 17, 2001, just 7 months after meeting. Jose attributed his cheerful, modern, and smart personality to winning Rosanna over. They soon had a son named Gono, but problems began to emerge soon after. Jose was a controlling and jealous partner who frequently belittled Rosanna and her family. The emotional abuse escalated into physical violence, leaving Rosanna feeling trapped and terrified. Jose's intimidating presence, reinforced by his possession of 2 guns, allowed him to maintain control, a situation that Rosanna's family was painfully aware of. He would often flaunt his guns when they had visitors, or when he visited others. On one occasion, Rosanna's brother Oscar witnessed Jose physically assaulting her while they were painting their house, telling her to shut up before hitting her. Another time, Rosanna's father noticed bruises on her back, and she revealed that Jose had dragged her across the pavement. Despite these challenges, Rosanna and Jose had their second child, and Rosanna tried to make the relationship work, hoping to provide a stable home for their children. However, Her efforts were consistently thwarted by José's temper and disrespectful behavior. Moreover, José's mother Elsa exerted control over their household from a distance, making decisions about their lives during her brief visits to Argentina. By 2006, Rosana had reached her breaking point after enduring years of unbearable abuse, and she finally found the courage to report José for domestic violence. Her family, however, remained largely oblivious to the full extent of her suffering. Months later, Rosana filed a second complaint, which included a request for a medical examination to document her injuries. It was then that she confided in her sister Monica, and the two made a pact to stay in close contact, reaching out to each other whenever something happened. Monica became Rosana's safe haven and primary source of support, providing a refuge from the unbearable realities of life with José. Rosana would often visit Monica's apartment with her children, though José would dictate when they had to return, frequently backing up his demands with death threats. Rosana made the difficult decision to move in with Monica and the children, leaving José to stay in his own home. After a period of time, Rosana took further action by filing another complaint and seeking a divorce, which resulted in a restraining order being issued against José. From then on, the only times they met were during child visitation sessions at a neutral location in El Remanso Exal de la Cruz, as arranged by the court. Rosana confided in her neighbor, Daniel Gonzalez, a married father of one who worked as a gardener. Rumors began to circulate about a possible romantic relationship between Rosana and Daniel, although this was never confirmed. Meanwhile, José's threats persisted, and Rosana shared a chilling voicemail with her brother Oscar, in which José casually spoke about killing her in mid-2007 while socializing with friends at a bar. Rosana met Oscar Lugo, a 32-year-old man from Marino who worked in a sewing workshop. They quickly became close, exchanging phone numbers and starting a romantic relationship. Oscar was an old-fashioned gentleman who treated Rosana with kindness, attention, and listened to her, which was a welcome change after all the turmoil she had faced. By December 2007, Oscar had become a part of Rosana's holiday celebrations, even dressing up as Santa Claus to delight her two sons. However, their happiness was threatened by José, who was keeping a close eye on Rosana's every move and was aware of her new relationship. The looming divorce had panicked him. José tried to persuade Rosana to end things with Oscar by offering her a truck, but she refused. When Rosana had a severe nervous breakdown, it was Oscar who accompanied her to the hospital, not José. Running out of options, José, with the help of his mother Elsa, concocted a plan to hire a hitman whose identity remains unknown. On January 16, 2008, Rosana and her sister Monica went to El Rano to pick up her sons, aged 4 and 3. However, José delayed the handover, making excuses. At 9:15 p.m., José called Rosana, claiming that Geronimo had a fever and that he would take him to the hospital and return him the next day. But Rosana insisted on taking care of Geronimo herself and asked for the children to be returned. The call was brief, and Rosana then went back inside. Around 10 p.m., Rosana sent Oscar Lugo a casual text about their plans for the next day. Later, at 10:50 p.m., Rosana and Monica sat down for dinner when José called again, unleashing a deadly trap. Rosana stepped out into the garden to improve the reception, but a shadowy figure emerged from behind the trees and shot her 4 times with a .45 caliber gun. Monica, hearing the shots, screamed as Rosana staggered and fell. Panicked, Monica tried calling 911, but the call wouldn't go through. She then asked her boyfriend to alert the police. Meanwhile, Oscar Lugo, oblivious to the events, attempted to contact Rosana at 11 p.m., but got no response. He then tried to reach Monica, but she didn't answer. The police investigation revealed that the shooter had entered from an adjacent vacant lot. A witness reported seeing someone fleeing through a gap in the fence, but couldn't provide a clear description due to the darkness. José was left stunned after being questioned and subsequently requested a lawyer to take over the proceedings before departing the following day. Meanwhile, a red sweater was discovered during further searches, which Rosanna's relatives identified as belonging to Jose, solidifying his position as the prime suspect in their minds. The case garnered widespread media attention, sending shockwaves throughout the country and sparking a scandal as Jose and his mother publicly proclaimed his innocence, while also making disparaging remarks about Rosanna and suggesting that her multiple lovers should be investigated instead. After the incident, Daniel the gardener became reclusive, shunning all human contact. On the night of Rosanna's funeral, Raldo observed Jose lurking in the distance, watching from his truck without offering condolences or joining the mourners. Jose's defense strategy later focused on discrediting Monica, Rosanna's sister, and the sole witness by raising questions about her behavior, such as why her clothes bore no blood stains and why she had prioritized calling for help over assisting her sister. However, this theory lacked credibility, and the investigators countered that the murder weapon was too heavy for a woman to wield. The detectives also highlighted a crucial point. Anyone familiar with the house would know that Rosanna had to venture outside to get a cell signal, suggesting a high degree of premeditation in the crime. During the investigation, Rosanna's sons were cared for by their father and grandmother Elsa, while their grandmother Graciela was granted limited access. In contrast, Monica and Oscar were denied access, with Jose citing safety concerns for his sons, despite the legal restrictions. The children longed to see their Aunt Monica, prompting Jose to occasionally allow supervised visits. Monica seized these opportunities to take the children to see a psychologist. Eventually, Graciela successfully obtained visitation rights, although she was denied guardianship. In a contemporaneous interview, Jose claimed that Rosanna had 4 lovers, all of whom had criminal records. According to Jose, Rosanna engaged in intimate relationships with these men to uncover their secrets, which she then leveraged to blackmail them for personal gain. Meanwhile, following threats, Oscar was placed under police protection as a protected witness in his sister's case, requiring him to wear a tracking bracelet. As 2007 drew to a close, investigators still lacked concrete evidence to bring charges against any of the suspects. However, a significant breakthrough came a year after the murder, when Jose was arrested in January 2008, charged with aggravated homicide due to their romantic relationship, premeditation, and the alleged involvement of multiple perpetrators. 4 years after the attack, Oscar exercised his visitation rights to take his nephews to play soccer, sharing a heartwarming hug with the 6- and 7-year-old boys. In April 2013, the trial commenced. Jose maintained his innocence during the May proceedings, but the trial was delayed when he suffered a stroke, ultimately pushing the final verdict to November 2013. The judges concluded that the murder was meticulously planned, bearing the hallmarks of organized crime. Jose and Elsa were found to have chosen the time and place for the attack, aware that a phone call would lure Rosanna outside, rendering her vulnerable. The court determined that financial motives drove the murder, as Jose sought to avoid splitting the marital assets. Jose and Elsa received life imprisonment sentences. The higher court upheld the conviction, citing Jose's threats, the domestic violence endured by Rosanna, and the dominant influence of his mother. The actual perpetrators of the shooting were never identified. In 2015, Jose and Elsa were placed under house arrest, with Jose's health and Elsa's age cited as reasons, allowing the children to reunite with them. The media continued to follow the children's story for years, during which Monica and Graciela had no contact with them. The boys were shuffled between homes familiar to their father, but unknown to Rosanna's family. In January 2017, the court granted the children a weekend visit with their maternal grandparents for the first time. The Galliano family prepared their home with fresh paint, a thorough cleaning, and decorations, and Graciela cooked their favorite dish. That weekend, the Galliano home was filled with joy as the boys played soccer, video games, and even asked to sleep in their grandmother's bed, whom they hadn't seen in over 2 years. On November 24, 2018, Jose passed away after another stroke. The event was another devastating blow for the children who attended their father's funeral. During the funeral, they expressed their concerns about their future to their Aunt Monica, who reassured them with calmness and love, promising to support whatever they decided. They chose to live with Monica, who then had to confront Elsa to communicate the boys' decision. Through these and many other instances, it was clear that Monica always prioritized her nephew's wishes, whether they wanted to talk or preferred silence. Monica's primary goal was to provide stability and comfort for the boys. In March 2019, Jono decided against switching schools, opting to stay close to his friends and see out his final 2 years. He returned to live with his grandmother, Elsa. Meanwhile, Monica pursued custody of Nahuan. Things appeared to be settling, but tragedy struck in late November 2019 when 87-year-old Elsa was hospitalized and shortly after, passed away on November 30th. The following month, Monica was awarded custody of Nahuan. By the end of the year, Jono had moved in with a family friend of his grandmother's. Both brothers still required psychological support to cope with their traumatic experiences, with Jono grappling with depression. Their psychologist acknowledged the staggering sequence of events they had endured. In March 2020, Jono's housemate passed away, prompting him to take refuge with his Aunt Monica until October of that year. When he turned 18, Geronimo rented a small apartment and began living independently, supported by the income generated from his inherited properties. Meanwhile, Monica initiated legal proceedings to secure their inheritance, fearing they might be stripped of their assets. Nahuan, on the other hand, demonstrated emotional stability thanks to the support he received, and was encouraged to continue attending therapy as needed. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Blummel family. Roger Blummel, born January 17, 1965, was raised in a big, close-knit family with strong values. Even in high school, he was driven and ambitious. He worked in transportation and later discovered his talent in sales, where he excelled. Friends say he could sell anything to anyone, thanks to his kind, cheerful personality. He was always happy and loved making others smile. Roger enjoyed a fulfilling life and a strong bond with his family, but something was missing: a life partner. That all changed one day when he met the right person. Although the details of their meeting are unclear, a close friend recalled that Roger was immediately smitten with a young woman and confidently declared his intention to marry her by the end of the evening. The woman who caught his attention was Melissa. Born on January 1, 1960, in Wichita, Melissa grew up in a loving family of 6 siblings, although she tragically lost a younger sister in infancy. Melissa was a kind, diligent, and helpful person who always put others before herself. She started her career as a bank cashier and worked her way up the ranks, earning promotions through her dedication, teamwork, and strong work ethic. Her career was marked by success, ultimately leading to her appointment as vice president of the bank. The first meeting of Roger and Melissa marked the start of a lifelong partnership between 2 kindred spirits, who tied the knot in 1991. On the surface, the Blummels seemed to have it all. Melissa's rapid rise through the banking ranks, while Roger's charisma enabled him to successfully launch his own business venture. With a natural talent for bringing people together, Roger thrived on sharing good times with friends and spreading joy to those around him. In Melissa, he had found the ideal partner to share in his adventures. What's more, the couple's strong sense of social responsibility drove them to participate in and contribute to various charitable, sporting, and community-driven initiatives in their locality. The Blummel had an idyllic life, but it lacked one thing: a child to bring laughter and joy. After years of trying to conceive, they decided to adopt. A social worker introduced them to Kesha, who was putting her 2 sons, Tony and Chris, up for adoption. The Blummel wanted a closed adoption, but Kesha preferred open. In the end, the Blummel approach won, and Tony and Chris became part of their family, starting a new life. Tony was amazed by daily dinners. The kids quickly adapted, thriving in elementary school and beyond. They excelled in high school, making diverse friends and starring in sports like wrestling and football. Tony's wrestling prowess earned him second place in a division competition, promising a bright future for the family. Tony's family life took a drastic turn for the worse during his senior year of high school. Until then, he had been a model child, but suddenly he became rebellious and constantly clashed with his parents, resentful that they favored his younger brother, Chris. He started drinking, breaking curfews, and even smoking marijuana, causing chaos at home and making it seem like all hope was lost for him to get back on track. Tony had always dreamed of joining the United States Air Force after graduating, but his new behavior ruined his chances. In 2013, he was arrested for a violent offense, and then again for driving under the influence, which meant his records would prevent him from pursuing a career in military aviation. Tony's life spun out of control after these events, lacking direction after high school. He shunned education and jobs, preferring to sleep in and get high on cannabis. Melissa lived in fear of his violent outbursts, and there was another secret the family didn't know. Since 2013, Kesha contacted her biological sons on social media. Tony was excited to reconnect, but Chris seemed unreceptive. Kesha was devastated after giving them up, relieved they were with a good family together. Reconnecting with Tony thrilled her, but she resented the family for allegedly turning Chris against her. Moreover, when Kesha learned about Tony's troubles with his adoptive parents, she saw an opportunity to reconnect with her son and swiftly extended an invitation for him to visit her. At the adoptive home, things worsened. Tony's rage boiled over, and he punched a hole in the wall. This was the last straw. The family realized they and Chris were no longer safe. After failed attempts to address Tony's behavior, Roger and Melissa made the tough decision to ask him to leave. He started by wandering aimlessly, but he soon understood he needed to take action to support himself financially. He got jobs at fast food restaurants, and, to make some extra money, he also sold cannabis. Despite having no fixed address and sleeping at different friends' houses each night, he eventually fell in with a group of young people who were heavily into drug abuse. Among the midst of despairing events, a lifeline emerged for Tony when Kesha extended an invitation for him to move to California and live with her. Tony seized the opportunity with eagerness, and the reunion took place in September 2013 at Kesha's California residence. Accompanied by his high school best friend, Braden, who had dropped out in his junior year to pursue a life of drug dealing, he arrived filled with hope, seeking Kesha's support, who was well-versed in the drug trade, to establish a large-scale marijuana operation in the area, and even discussed entering the medical cannabis market. The reality was that they had arrived to live in a small apartment, which had only one room. It is not hard to imagine that the situation in the place began to be tense, particularly because Sean, Kesha's partner, had 2 jobs and was the only one bringing in money to cover the expenses for 5 people. Kesha only contributed a part of the social assistance she received for her daughter. Kesha, Tony, and Braden spent their days using drugs, and the woman's younger daughter was all the time under that bad influence. Sean reached a breaking point when she discovered Tony and Braden selling marijuana near her house. She told them to stop, citing the danger to her as the property owner. Then, she issued an ultimatum: get a job or leave the apartment. But instead of complying, the group banded together against her, eventually leaving for a nearby hotel for 2 weeks. However, without income, they couldn't afford the hotel bill. They didn't consider getting a decent job due to their financial struggles. Their initial plan was to head back to Kansas, possibly because Tony was familiar with the area from his drug dealings. After nearly a day of driving, they decided to stop in Arizona and spend the night at a hotel. It was during their stay that Tony shared an idea with his companions to kill his adoptive parents in order to inherit their wealth. Once they arrived in Wichita and settled into a hotel room they'd rented for a month, they focused on finalizing the details of this plan. Tony had devised a straightforward plan. He would kill Roger and Melissa, collect the insurance payout, sell off their assets, and use the proceeds to launch a more extensive drug operation. Tony was convinced that his original family would amass a fortune by growing and selling marijuana. He even pinpointed the ideal day to carry out the crime: Friday, November 15th, 2013. This date suited him perfectly, since his brother Chris would be away, attending a wrestling event related to his practice. As a former wrestling star, Tony still maintained connections with some team members, which is how he learned about his brother's commitment that evening. Tony hatched a plan to invite Roger and Melissa to a meeting under the guise of discussing their past issues and making amends. While they were out, Braden would bring Kesha to the empty residence, where she would steal valuables. Tony knew the location of a stash of emergency cash his adoptive parents kept at home. The plan was to make it look like a botched robbery. When Roger and Melissa returned, Kesha would kill them. Initially, everyone thought the plan was solid, but Braden later got cold feet and refused to participate. He did, however, agree to help by obtaining the necessary guns. As an alternative, he suggested his friend Andrew, a former high school acquaintance, who could drive Kesha to the residence and play a supporting role in the crime. Braden obtained 2 pistols from other criminals as promised. It's worth noting that there was never any plan to share the money with Andrew, who was hired to drive and provide backup for Kesha during the robbery in exchange for $11,000. Kesha would ultimately be the one carrying out the heist. In early November 2013, Kesha shared a photo on social media of herself with Tony, accompanied by a caption that read, "A bond that cannot be broken." Then, on Friday, November 15th, Tony's prediction came true. His adoptive parents agreed to meet with him, just as he had foreseen. The encounter took place peacefully. At the Blumels' house, a completely different scenario unfolded. Following Roger and Melissa's departure for the meeting, Kesha and Andrew snuck in, broke into the garage, and started searching through the house. They seized the chance to steal some small valuable items and the cash the couple kept on hand for emergencies. With the first part of their plan accomplished, Kesha and Andrew concealed themselves near the secluded residence, lying in wait for their victims to return. Tony called, saying his meeting ended and he was dropped off at the hotel. The wait was short. As the Blumel vehicle stopped, 2 attackers emerged. Kesha stood by Melissa's side. Andrew aimed at Roger. Melissa, still shocked, recognized the mother of the adopted children. She barely said, "Oh my God, Kesha," before a shot to the head made her collapse. Roger, frantic, tried to help his wife. Kesha approached, gun aimed at him, but it jammed. She tried again. Roger frozen in shock beside his wife's body. The gun finally fired, and he collapsed next to her. After the fatal plan was executed, Kesha and Andrew hastily departed in the vehicle they had arrived in. The Blumel spouses remained at the scene until approximately 9:15 p.m. when Chris returned from his meeting to find the devastating scene. He quickly called 911, reporting that he had just arrived home to find his parents semi-conscious inside their van. He described Roger as coughing and Melissa as nodding her head up and down, both with visible gunshot wounds to their heads. The dispatcher instructed him to attempt resuscitation efforts while emergency services arrived shortly thereafter to take control of the situation. Miraculously, the Blumel was still alive, their lives clinging to a fragile thread, and were swiftly rushed to a hospital. Meanwhile, back at the hotel where they were staying, Kesha appeared to suffer a panic attack, declaring that she urgently needed to take an illicit substance, which she proceeded to do, joined by the other boys. Also, at that moment, Kesha handed over the used gun and a wallet containing stolen cash and micas to be discarded in a nearby stream. Andrew disposed of the evidence in a nearby park's pond. The next day, Tony used the proceeds to start dealing marijuana, earning his first $100 profit. Tragically, on the same day, Melissa lost her battle with illness and passed away at the age of 53. Tony visited his father in the hospital, unaware that he had been previously removed from the Blummells' will and insurance policies. As it turned out, the two heinous crimes had been committed for nothing. In the days that followed, it emerged that Andrew had not received payment and was even unaware that Kesha had stolen cash from the Blummell family's home. Eventually, fate caught up with them. During the initial inspection of the Blummell residence, the police observed that the garage door had been forced open, and upon entering the house, they found everything in disarray, with items scattered haphazardly. It was confirmed that money, jewelry, and other valuables had been stolen. The authorities considered the possibility that the attack on the couple had been a consequence of their arrival while the thieves were still inside. However, since the fatal assault had occurred prior to the couple's entry into the home, this initial hypothesis was soon dismissed. In the van where Roger and Melissa were attacked, no significant fingerprints were found, although investigators did discover a book casing. Then the authorities shifted their focus to the victims' workplaces, suspecting that a disgruntled client might have sought revenge. However, this theory was also ruled out, so it was time to interview people close to the couple. Tony was first on the detective's list, as he had been the last person seen alive with the victims. But he vehemently denied any involvement, claiming he knew nothing about the incident. According to him, after finishing dinner, he had returned directly to the hotel where he was staying with his mother. The hotel staff corroborated this alibi. Next on the list was Chris, who had discovered the bodies, but he was quickly cleared after verifying that he had been at a dinner with the wrestling team at the time of the incident. However, the investigators discovered an anomaly in his behavior. He didn't appear overly distraught, instead seeming lost in thought. When police pursued this lead and questioned him about his parents' disappearance, Chris promptly replied that one person came to mind. He added that the only individual who might harbor a grudge against their parents and possibly be capable of such an act was his older brother, Tony. With this significant lead, the authorities caught a fortunate break in their hunt for the culprits. A man contacted the police, revealing that a young acquaintance of Tony's had approached him to buy a gun. The detectives homed in on this individual, and upon digging into his background, uncovered a long history of drug-related offenses. Furthermore, they discovered he had accompanied Tony on a trip to California. The suspect was none other than Braden. Shortly after, Braden received a message from his family warning him that the sheriff's office investigators were seeking to question him about the Blummell case. The morning after, Braden voluntarily went to the police station. According to a press report, on his way to the station, Braden stopped at a pond to dispose of an item, allegedly the guns used in the crime, which had not been discarded as planned. As it happened, he was already under surveillance. And when the police searched the water, they found an unused pistol in the bag he had thrown away. Braden's interrogation lasted 3 days, during which he initially denied any involvement in the incident. However, he eventually cracked under the pressure from the authorities, confessing everything he knew, revealing that the idea for the attack originated with Tony. Tony Blummell, 18, and his biological mother, Kesha, 35, were arrested on November 19, 2013, at their hotel. Andrew, also 18, was taken into custody, and Braden, another 18-year-old, was arrested the following day. Initially, Kesha denied any involvement in the robbery and other crimes, while the 3 young men confessed. On November 25, 2013, the accused made their first court appearance via video conference, facing identical charges: first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated robbery, burglary, and theft. Bail was set at $500,000 for the 3 young men and $1 million for Kesha. On December 21st, Roger's heart stopped beating, and at just 48 years old, he was reunited with his beloved Melissa. Following Roger's death, The situation for the woman and the three young men took a dire turn as they faced the possibility of being charged with capital murder, which carried the risk of a death penalty sentence. On January 3, 2014, the four detainees were formally charged with one count of capital murder for allegedly killing multiple people in the same incident. Kesha also faced additional charges: 2 counts of aggravated robbery, 1 count of burglary, and 1 count of theft. The preliminary hearing took place on July 17th of that same year, by which time Braden had cut a deal with authorities, agreeing to become the prosecution's star witness in exchange for leniency in his sentence. In 2015, following a year of negotiations, Braden and 2 others implicated in the crime reached agreements with the prosecution. Under these agreements, the accused parties would not contest the charges brought against them, and in return, they would relinquish their right to appeal their sentences. In exchange, the prosecution agreed to refrain from pursuing the death penalty and to dismiss certain charges. In a series of separate hearings commencing mid-2015, each of the accused parties formally confirmed their intention to plead guilty. Kesha got life in prison without parole for capital murder, plus 10 years for aggravated robbery. Her sentences will run back to back. In court, she expressed regret and respect for the victim's family, but denied involvement in the crime. She's still in a high-security prison today. Tony Blummel, known to all as Tony, received the same sentence as his mother. At the hearing, his aunt Christina read a victim impact statement, thanking authorities for justice and mentioning the love Roger and Melissa had shown Tony. Tony listened in silence, tears welling up. Christina told him he'd chosen his path, and one day he might understand the consequences of those choices. Tony's now in a correctional facility with a record of many infractions. A week later, Andrew was found guilty of first and second-degree murder, sentenced to life and 155 months. Last, Braden, who'd made a deal with prosecutors, was guilty of second-degree murder, sentenced to 242 years. His first release chance is May 28, 2035, but he's had 71 disciplinary reports for bad behavior. District Attorney satisfied with case outcome. Despite waiving appeal rights, Kesha tried and failed. Undisputed, Roger and Melissa Blummel's lives ended tragically. Kesha's excess-driven life led to tragedy, sparked by a descendant rejecting her. For his part, Tony repaid the couple's love and care with resentment, envy, and violence, opting for an unjustifiable path of substance abuse that ultimately led him to commit a double crime. As a consequence, Kesha's younger daughter was forced to grow up in a foster home. In contrast, Chris Blummel, with the support of his family, managed to overcome the ordeal and build a fulfilling life. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Schmidt family. Tyler Schmidt was born in Iowa, USA, on November 13, 1979. He grew up in Cedar Falls, a city that is home to the University of Northern Iowa. As a young boy, Tyler joined the Boy Scouts, where he earned the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout. This experience sparked a lifelong love for nature and camping in him. The camps organized by the Lutheran Church, which promoted family bonding, were particularly enjoyable to him. In his free time, he learned to play the trumpet. Tyler's true passion, however, lay in adventure and sports. He was a member of the cross-country running team and the swim team at Northern Iowa High School in Cedar Falls. He also enjoyed outdoor activities like canoeing, hiking, and snowshoeing. Later, his interest in computing led him to Truman State University in Missouri, where he studied computer science and earned his degree. It was there that he met Sarah, who would later become his wife. Sarah was born on March 27, 1980, in Kansas City. During her childhood, she spent time near St. Louis with her siblings, Karen, Jane, and Adam. Sharing Tyler's passion for the outdoors, Sarah enjoyed bird watching and studying insects. Like Tyler, she was a dedicated Girl Scout and earned the highest honor, the Gold Award. Her adventurous spirit was inherited from her mother, with whom she went on a backpacking trip to Central America. It's no wonder that Tyler knew Sarah was his soulmate when he met her as a student. Sarah excelled academically and demonstrated exceptional leadership skills, particularly in student projects focused on enhancing school life. Her positive leadership and inclination earned her the prestigious Truman Scholarship while still at Washington High School in Washington, Missouri. This scholarship led her to Truman State University, where she met Tyler. As they fell deeply in love, she readily accepted his marriage proposal. Both Tyler's and Sarah's families supported their decision to marry, recognizing that they were perfect for each other and destined to build a beautiful family together. On June 22, 2002, guests gathered at St. John Lutheran Church for Tyler and Sarah's wedding. Family members took their seats, while Sarah waited outside with her father. At 22, the couple exchanged vows, promising to stay together until death parted them. They chose Boundary Waters for their 10-day honeymoon, sharing a love for nature. In the initial 10 years of their marriage, Tyler and Sarah prioritized establishing financial security and advancing their professional careers. After completing their undergraduate degrees in Missouri, the couple relocated to Lawrence, where they pursued their master's degrees at the University of Kansas. Sarah eventually worked as a computer science expert, while Tyler held jobs at a supermarket, a delivery company, and UPS. He also had a long-term career at a company specializing in business billing and payments, which lasted for 18 years. During this period, the Schmidts' marriage was filled with exciting experiences beyond their professional commitments. The couple made it a point to spend quality time together, exploring new outdoor destinations and engaging in various activities. They regularly socialized with family and friends, bonding over their shared love of board games. Occasionally, they participated in events organized by the Lutheran Church. As enthusiastic fans of the Kansas Jayhawks, they attended basketball tournaments held at the Allen Fieldhouse. The year 2013 was a mix of sadness and happiness for the couple. They suffered a significant loss when Sarah's father passed away from a heart attack, leaving his loved ones in grief. However, 2 years later, in 2015, they experienced the joys of parenthood with the birth of their son, Arlo. In 2018, they welcomed their beautiful daughter, Lula Schmidt, into the world. When Arlo turned 6 and Lula was 3, the family made the decision to move to Cedar Falls to be closer to Tyler's family. The community of Cedar Falls warmly welcomed them, and soon they became active members of it. Tyler continued his work as a software engineer, while Sarah took on a role as an assistant at the city's public library. The children enrolled in the preschool program at Lincoln Elementary School. Tyler and Sarah were renowned for their kind nature and willingness to lend a helping hand, making everyone around them feel valued and important. This dedication earned them the admiration and affection of their neighbors and the entire community. Similarly, at the library, Sarah's warm and friendly personality quickly made her a well-known and appreciated figure, both among her colleagues and the wider community. The couple instilled their passion for outdoor activities and nature in their children, Arlo and Lula. In 2021, they began taking their kids camping, and despite their busy schedules, the children loved these trips so much that the parents made time for them whenever possible. By mid-2022, Sarah's workload had increased significantly. She took a day off in June to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary and planned another day off in July for a family vacation. She had to finish a project for the library by July 26th, but was determined not to let it interfere with the family's plans. During the week of July 11th, Sarah told her brother's wife that she would be taking the kids camping at Makata Cave State Park in Jackson County, Iowa, a popular destination known for its 13 impressive caves and stunning natural landscapes. On Thursday, July 21st, the family packed up their car and drove 140 miles to reach Makata Caves. The Schmidt family, Tyler and Sarah, both 42, and their children, Arlo, 9, and Lula, 7, arrived at the campsite before 5 p.m. As the camping area was crowded, they set up near the park's entrance. A few hours later, around 7 p.m., Another family parked their vehicle about 200 feet from the initial family's tent. This family consisted of Joe and Cecilia Sherwin and their 23-year-old son Anthony, who hailed from Nebraska. The Sherwins proceeded to set up two separate tents, one for Joe and Cecilia, and another for their son Anthony. At the time, they were on their way back home following a week-and-a-half-long camping trip that had taken them to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The journey had been an enjoyable experience, and it had brought Joe, Cecilia, and Anthony closer together. Anthony was a devoted son, praised by his mom for his kind and sensitive nature. He was an excellent student and entrepreneur, working on a lucrative business venture that would financially support his parents. Though his mom, Cecilia, didn't know the details, Anthony kept her updated, mentioning only that his project involved secure emails. At Makata Caves, the campers retired to their tents as night fell. However, their peaceful slumber was disrupted before dawn on July 22nd by the sudden sound of gunshots. Just prior to the commotion, a man clad in black had entered the Schmidt's tent, attacking Tyler and then Sarah. Arlo, who had been asleep, was awakened by his sister Lula's screams. As he turned, he was met with a horrifying sight: blood inside the tent. Frantic with fear, he managed to escape and ran to seek help. As he fled, he heard one final shot. Meanwhile, Cecilia and Joe, who were camped nearby, rushed out of their tent amidst the chaos. Joe searched frantically for his son among the campers, asking if anyone had seen him. Arlo, still in a state of panic, continued to run until he encountered the sheriffs. He was screaming for help, explaining that his parents had been shot. Cecilia grasped his hand and ran with him to the park entrance. Once there, terrified and unsure of what had transpired, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. She was beside herself with worry, fearing that her son might be among the victims, since he had been sleeping near the tent where the shots had come from. Cecilia called the Jackson County 911 operator to report hearing gunshots, but she struggled to pronounce the name of the park where she was, making it difficult to convey her location. She explained that she was with a boy who claimed that his parents had been shot. The call between Cecilia and 911 lasted 23 minutes as she answered the operator's questions. The operator relayed the attack to the police and park rangers, but the call was briefly disconnected. Cecilia persisted and called back, only to be put on hold while the dispatcher contacted emergency responders. Despite the tense and nervous atmosphere in the park, Cecilia remained calm thanks to the adrenaline. After providing details about their exact location, she handed the phone to Arlo, the boy. He told the dispatcher that he was in a tent with his mom, sister, and dad, and when he woke up, he saw someone dressed in black holding a gun. When the 911 operator asked the child where his father was, he paused before responding that he thought his father was hurt. At 6:30 a.m., police officers and paramedics arrived at the campsite to find a horrific scene. All occupants of the Schmidt's tent were dead. The once peaceful campsite had become a crime scene. Law enforcement immediately launched a search for the shooter, who could have been anywhere. The tactical teams swiftly evacuated Makata Cave State Park and Camp Shalom, a nearby Christian summer camp, located 1.5 miles from the attack site. As officials evacuated visitors, they gathered them outside the park. Once everyone was accounted for, it was clear that only one person, Anthony Sherwin, was missing, and he was armed. During an aerial search at 11 a.m., police found a body. Upon reaching it, they confirmed it was Anthony, deceased. Although an investigation was necessary, police identified him as the prime suspect in the homicides, believing he had committed the attack on the Schmidts before taking his own life. The authorities closed the park following the incident, a measure that remained in place until July 28th. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources offered their condolences, with their spokesperson expressing devastation on behalf of the entire team, stating that the event had shaken Iowa's tradition of enjoying its natural wonders. But the legacy would continue for the millions of families who recreate in Iowa's parks. As a mark of respect for Sarah's co-workers, the local authority closed the library for the rest of the day. The tragedy also drew reactions from other political leaders, including the Iowa governor, who expressed horror at the attack and sorrow for the unimaginable tragedy. A U.S. House representative from Iowa tweeted that it was a senseless and horrific crime. Sarah's family was devastated when they lost her. Her sister was particularly heartbroken, feeling as though her life had been turned upside down. She couldn't accept that Sarah was gone, and that she would no longer be able to pick up the phone and talk to her or watch her niece grow up. Family members came from as far away as North Dakota, Texas, and Michigan to attend the private funeral service, which was held at Greenwood Cemetery on August 2nd. Meanwhile, as the loved ones of the Schmidts coped with their grief and tried to console and care for Arlo, the authorities continued their investigation into the brutal crime. According to the Iowa Department of Public Safety's findings, which were based on the autopsy results, Tyler died from a gunshot wound and multiple sharp force injuries. Sarah's death was caused by sharp force injuries alone, and their young daughter was both shot and strangled. In early August 2022, authorities officially identified Anthony Sherwin as the person responsible for the murder of the Schmidt family. Sherwin, 23, had no prior criminal record and acted alone before taking his own life, according to the police. The investigation failed to uncover any motive behind the attack. The assistant director of the Division of Criminal Investigation clarified that there was no established connection between Anthony and the Schmidt family prior to the incident, despite them being neighboring campers. The Nebraska Police Department assisted in the investigation by searching the Sherwin family apartment, but found no suicide note or any indication that could explain why Anthony targeted the Schmidt family and himself. His Facebook page yielded no clues, as it was completely blank. Regarding the weapon used in the attack, the assistant director of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation reported that a single hand-assembled firearm was recovered near Anthony's body. This type of weapon, commonly known as a ghost gun, is built by individuals using online purchased parts without restrictions, as they lack serial numbers, making them difficult to regulate and trace. Anthony's parents confirmed that their son had built his own weapon using online instructions. However, they clarified that he did this as a challenge, not because he wanted to own a gun. They emphasized that Anthony was responsible and had never hurt anyone or any animal. The parents, Cecilia and her husband, said their family had never owned guns before. But due to Nebraska's rising crime rates, they decided to acquire some. Because they were new to handling guns, they even took classes to learn how to use them properly. They brought the homemade gun on their trip to protect themselves from crime and possible bear attacks, which they had experienced before while camping. They intended to get rid of the gun later. When they returned home, Anthony's parents were determined to prove their son's innocence. They believed he was a victim of murder, not the killer. According to his mother, an independent autopsy report showed that Anthony had been shot twice, not once, as the police claimed. She was puzzled by how he could have shot himself a second time, which challenged the authorities' suicide theory. They also questioned the description of the clothing the attacker wore. Cecilia remembered telling the 911 operator that the attacker was wearing black, which didn't match what her son had on, green shorts she had given him the day before the tragedy occurred. Furthermore, Cecilia and Joe claimed that the police did not reveal where they found Anthony's body, or whether the weapon he supposedly used to take his own life was the same one used in the attack on the Schmidts. Cecilia sent an email to the media outlining her concerns about the investigation into her son Anthony's death. She emphasized that Anthony had too many reasons to live and would not have abandoned everything in such a way. In her opinion, Anthony was incapable of killing and had no connection to the Schmidt family, and they had seen no signs of him planning an attack. When she asked investigators if they had conducted a ballistic test to confirm matches, they did not respond. Similarly, when Anthony's parents requested the final investigation report to commission an independent review, they received no response. In January 2023, a media outlet submitted a request for public records related to the case under Iowa's Open Records Law and the Freedom of Information Act. The request included incident reports, investigation documents, crime scene summaries, and autopsy reports. However, Devin McClone from the Iowa Department of Public Safety Commissioner responded that the requested records were not public, and the office could only share the immediate facts and circumstances of the case, as provided in the press release links. A few days after the tragedy, a media outlet emailed the official to ask if the weapon Anthony used to take his own life was the same one used in the murders, but she never responded. As it stands, the police believe that Anthony Sherwin was a random killer who brutally murdered 3 beloved members of a Cedar Falls family. However, the family of Cecilia and Joe refuses to accept that their son, who was kind and studious, was involved in the crime. They insist that he was another innocent victim and are determined to prove his innocence. Arlo, the sole survivor of the massacre, was taken in by his aunt and uncle in Cedar Falls. In an interview with a local newspaper, Sarah's brother proudly described his nephew as brave and reported that he was doing well mentally. The GoFundMe page set up after the tragedy continues to receive donations to support Arlo's care and education. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lucy Landry. Lucy Davies was born in 1971 in Rhondda, a county in England. She was the daughter of Roger and Andrea Davies and had a younger sister named Anna. The family lived in a small, tight-knit community of socially purposed housing, surrounded by stunning mountain scenery. Lucy had a happy and carefree childhood, bonding closely with her sister, who shared similar interests. Her parents often mentioned Lucy's infectious joy, which made her a standout student in primary school. Known for her outgoing and likable personality, Lucy quickly won over her teachers and classmates. With her undeniable beauty, she became one of the most popular and admired girls in school. Lucy and her sister Anna shared a passion for ponies, which led their father to enroll them in the local riding club. This experience taught them discipline and showcased their talent, eventually earning them the right to participate in various events and competitions. By the time Lucy started secondary school, she had developed into an exceptional rider. In addition to her riding skills, Lucy was also a talented musician. She took flute and piano lessons, dedicating long hours to practice and master both instruments. Her hard work paid off, and soon she had a comprehensive understanding of classical music. This led to her acceptance into a youth orchestra and her school's choir group. During this time, Lucy developed a romantic interest in Gareth Jenkins, but she kept it a secret. After completing secondary school in 1989, Lucy decided to pursue a music-related career. She enrolled in the University of Warwick to study for a bachelor's degree, hoping to become a music teacher. However, she soon realized that the degree program wasn't what she had expected. Her passion for music remained, but she didn't enjoy the direction of the program. As a result, Lucy changed her plan and opted to study urban planning instead. Around this time, Lucy met Gra McAllister, and they soon discovered that they shared a similar outlook on life, including a passion for art and common interests. A key aspect of their bond was their matching sense of humor. Their relationship developed naturally, and as they made plans for the future, Lucy decided to introduce Gra to her parents, Roger and Andrea. The meeting went well, and Lucy's parents were convinced that Gra was the right person for their daughter. In fact, they were so confident in their relationship that they bought Lucy a house in Coventry, northwest of London. This gift not only provided Lucy with a stable home, free from the uncertainties of renting and moving, but also reflected their wish for her to start a family. Shortly after moving in, Lucy invited Gra to live with her, and they continued their studies together. In 1995, they welcomed their first child, James. Lucy decided to take a break from university to care for him while Gra continued his studies and worked the night shift at the city's postal sorting office. Over time, this arrangement took a toll on Lucy, who felt bored and isolated at home, caring for their child and often separated from her partner for long periods. To alleviate her boredom, Lucy turned to internet chat rooms, seeking to meet new people and find some distraction. One night, Lucy engaged in lively conversations in various online chat rooms, where she encountered Harold Landry, a 53-year-old American from Louisiana. Growing up in a financially struggling family with a dozen siblings, Harold knew from an early age that he had to rely on his own efforts and determination to succeed. To escape poverty, he dedicated himself to hard work from a young age. His big break came when he realized that the key to success in the oil business wasn't owning wells, but providing essential infrastructure to well owners. Consequently, he founded a company specializing in designing and manufacturing hydraulic equipment for major oil companies in the southern United States. As he had predicted, the business made him incredibly wealthy, eventually earning him billionaire status. By then, Harold split his time between his central hobbies and a property on KML Island in Mexico. He had been married and divorced twice, with children from these unions, whose exact number and identities remained private. One thing was certain, however: Harold ensured that his children lacked nothing. A significant event took place in 1992 when Harold, now single, met a woman 20 years younger who was married. Despite her marital status, Harold used his charms to win her over, undeterred by her family's or husband's potential opposition. On February 6, 1994, Harold took her on an outing in New Orleans, hiring a babysitter to watch her children. After their evening together, Harold dropped his lover off at home and offered to drive the babysitter back to her own place. Surprisingly, no one seemed worried that her husband would discover the infidelity and react angrily. However, that's precisely what happened. Outside his wife's residence, Chris Price had been keeping a close eye on her every move. When the third party said goodbye to her, Chris followed him in his car. A short while later, Harold noticed he was being tailed. Acting on instinct, Harold opened the glove compartment, pulled out a firearm he normally kept there, and prepared for a confrontation. When they both stopped at a red light, the situation escalated. According to the babysitter's account, Harold brandished the revolver at Chris and fired. The bullet severely injured Chris, severing an artery in his neck and damaging a nerve connected to his vocal cord. Chris collapsed on the pavement, but luckily, there was a hospital nearby, allowing him to receive prompt medical attention. The doctors were able to save his life. Harold was arrested and charged with attempted murder. His trial took place in 1997. The defense attorney argued in the opening statement that Harold's actions were the result of a tragic and sordid affair involving Chris, and that he had acted out of fear and in self-defense. This strategy led the jury, composed of 4 men and 8 women, to convict Harold of the lesser offense of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. However, after an appeal, Harold was granted probation in exchange for a $500 fine and community service. Although he had hoped to be fully exonerated, he thanked his lawyer, Pat, for his efforts. The 2 men subsequently became close friends. After reaching a confidential agreement with Chris, Harold moved to Covington, where he lived a life of luxury, free from financial worries. When he started chatting with Lucy, he was open about his past, sharing stories about his jobs, romantic escapades, and legal issues. However, instead of deterring Lucy, this honesty only strengthened her attraction to him. The two began a captivating online romance, with Harold promising her a highly desirable lifestyle. Eventually, his persistence and persuasive abilities convinced Lucy to end her relationship with Gra, clearing the way for Harold to pursue her without any rival claiming his attention. In the early 2000s, Harold traveled to England to meet Lucy, and she took the opportunity to introduce him to her parents, Roger and Andrea, as her boyfriend. Although they were surprised by the significant age difference, They respected their daughter's decisions and did not object to the relationship. Harold felt fulfilled and fortunate to share his life with Lucy, and he spared no effort to surprise her, whether with luxurious gifts or anything else she desired. In fact, by then, he was so in love that he was already planning to propose marriage. However, he wanted to do it in an ideal setting. To achieve this goal, Harold took Lucy, her son James, and Gra on a trip to Mexico, a place that had become his favorite destination in the world. His longtime friend Pat, who had been his attorney in the past trial, also had an apartment close to his residence, which added to the feeling of comfort. Initially, Harold bought a diamond ring and shared the news with enthusiasm with Pat. However, Pat harbored certain suspicions about Lucy, and as the days passed, he found it strange that she had dedicated a good part of her time in Gra's company. Despite this, Harold was oblivious to it, and ultimately proceeded with his plan to propose. Lucy happily accepted the proposal, and in mid-2003, the couple celebrated their union. Shortly after, Harold surprised Lucy by buying $1 million property in an exclusive Worcester neighborhood. In this peaceful rural setting, their marriage got off to a prosperous start, helped by their excellent neighbors, Rachel Clark and Stephen Kennedy, with whom they formed a close friendship. Soon, Lucy gave birth to their first daughter, Harriet, which filled both her and Harold with joy. From then on, he devoted himself to the little girl with unwavering energy and commitment. He also maintained a loving relationship with James, treating him like his own son. As time passed, Lucy's workload increased, and her mood began to deteriorate in proportion to Harold's demands. He expected her to constantly adapt to his preferences and obey his requests without question. Lucy, however, had different expectations. This led to rising tensions between them. Lucy was outspoken and unafraid to express her opinions, but Harold was unwilling to compromise. Given their volatile personalities, their arguments frequently escalated into intense fights, followed by reconciliations once the conflict had subsided. The constant disputes that lasted for hours became a familiar background noise in the lives of Rachel and Stephen. They knew that Lucy and Harold's alcoholism fueled their arguments and complaints, which often led to days of not speaking to each other. Lucy reconnected with Gareth, an old friend from secondary school, and they spent hours catching up, occasionally interrupted by their own commitments. One evening, after Harold fell asleep, Lucy stayed on her computer, and it dawned on him that she was unhappy and looking for a distraction, possibly even a replacement, just like she had found him. In the autumn of 2009, Lucy invited Gareth to stay with her. Meanwhile, Harold returned to England, hoping to salvage their marriage, but as soon as he arrived home, Lucy asked him for a divorce. Initially, Harold was devastated, but after a few weeks, he started a new relationship with a woman he met online. Alongside their budding new relationships, divorce negotiations were progressing, and as is often the case, new disputes arose, particularly regarding the family home. Lucy's expectation was to retain the house, thereby guaranteeing a stable living arrangement for their children. However, Harold was adamant that this was not up for discussion. His proposed solution involved offering her financial compensation to purchase a more modest apartment independently. Simultaneously, he made the decision to entirely remove her from his will. Lucy was furious when she learned about her still husband's latest decisions. Her intense hatred towards him led her to share every detail about Harold's past with her son James, holding nothing back. Amidst the tension and complicated situation, Gareth invited her to take a break and spend a few days with him in Wales. Both Lucy and Harold had a serious drinking problem, and their arguments were becoming increasingly violent, leaving their children to suffer in a toxic environment. On the afternoon of February 1st, 2010, Harold had several glasses of wine. When Stephen returned from work, he found a notification that his package had been delivered to the wrong address, the Landrys. Harold invited Stephen in and offered him a glass of wine. This led to a ridiculous argument with Lucy over a piece of furniture she wanted to buy for their upcoming move. The argument quickly turned physical, and in the chaos, Harold grabbed a kitchen utensil and hit Lucy on the cheek. James rushed to the scene of the altercation and found his mother, Lucy, badly injured. He immediately called the police and then turned his attention to ensuring his younger sister's safety. Shortly after, Lucy, realizing she needed help, left the house with her children. Her first thought was to seek refuge at Stephen's house, which was nearby. As she headed in that direction, Harold caught up with her and attacked her with a knife, inflicting multiple injuries. He then left her lying under a bush in the garden, abandoning her. Stephen, alerted by Lucy's screams, rushed outside and found her just a few steps away. Initially, he thought she was unconscious, but quickly realized the gravity of the situation. The police responded promptly to the emergency call and arrived on the scene. They called for paramedics and searched the surrounding area for Harold, but only found the terrified children hiding in the backyard. The paramedics worked quickly to treat Lucy and rushed her to the hospital, where her heart unfortunately stopped beating shortly after arrival. Harold visited Rachel's house and confessed to her that a terrible event had occurred, but he didn't provide any additional information. He handed her 3 bank drafts worth a total of $40,000, some cash, the keys to his car, and several signed blank checks. After that, he headed back home. By then, multiple police patrols were searching for him. They eventually found him walking along the road and arrested him. Roger and Andrea were consumed by grief when they heard the devastating news. In a statement released by the police, they requested that people respect their privacy during this incredibly difficult time following the loss of their daughter. From that point on, their focus shifted to taking care of their grandchildren. The forensic examination revealed that Lucy's death was caused by multiple stab wounds to the chest. With this evidence, combined with James's eyewitness testimony, Harold was charged with murder on February 5, 2010, when he appeared in court. The trial took place in early February 2011, presided over by Judge David Fosin. Unlike previous instances, Pat did not serve as Harold's defender. Instead, attorney Andy Childs took on the role. Despite the challenging task ahead, Childs argued that Harold had been provoked by his wife's intense anger, leaving him no choice but to react as he did. During his emotional testimony, Harold expressed his love for Lucy and regretted his actions. Following the strategy outlined by his lawyer, Harold admitted to involuntary manslaughter, claiming that Lucy had driven him to his limits. To emphasize the brutality of the case, the prosecution presented a detailed animation in court, recreating the multiple injuries the victim suffered. This graphic presentation shocked those present in the courtroom. Ultimately, on February 24, 2011, the jury delivered a verdict after less than 4 hours of deliberation. They found Harold Landry guilty of murdering his 38-year-old wife, Lucy Landry, when he was 64 years old. The next day, the judge imposed the sentence. He strongly condemned Harold's actions, calling them indescribable and unforgivable. The judge rejected Harold's claims that Lucy may have provoked him, seeing them as a desperate attempt to avoid blame. As a result, Harold received a life sentence with a minimum term of 16 years, before being eligible for parole. By the time he would be eligible, he would be over 80 years old. Lucy's loved ones expressed gratitude, not only for the resolution of the case, but also for the judge's thoughtful comments, which they felt accurately reflected their own emotions. They acknowledged that the sentence brought some sense of relief from their pain, although they recognized that no length of sentence could restore Lucy's life, and they would need to come to terms with this difficult reality. Harold, on the other hand, maintained his claim of innocence, stating that he hoped to appeal the sentence in the future. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Dalia DiPolito. On a sunny afternoon in Bon Beach, Florida, a man named Muhammad visited the local police department with a shocking story. He claimed that a woman, whom he knew only as Delilah, had approached him with an unusual and disturbing request. Muhammad alleged that Delilah had offered to hire him to commit a murder. While his story seemed plausible, Muhammad failed to provide one crucial detail: Delilah's last name. Despite this limitation, the Bonn Beach Police Department took Muhammad's claim seriously and launched an investigation. The detectives were tasked with identifying the mysterious Delilah and determining who her husband was. To gather more information, they decided to use Muhammad as bait to set up a meeting with Delilah. They chose a local mobile gas station as the meeting location, given Muhammad's statement that Delilah lived nearby. At the designated meeting spot, the police set up several surveillance vehicles to monitor the encounter, hoping to gather evidence and piece together the puzzle surrounding Delilah's identity and motives. Before the woman arrived, the detectives briefed Muhammad on what to say to her. They secretly fitted him with a wire and recorder, allowing them to listen in on their conversation as it happened. As they continued to monitor the mobile gas station, the detectives focused on the interaction between Muhammad and a woman named Delilah. What surprised them was Delilah's appearance, which didn't fit the typical profile of someone who would want her husband killed. Delilah, an attractive woman wearing a skirt and tank top, got into the car with Muhammad. Muhammad, pretending to be hesitant, asked if it was worth having someone killed. Delilah replied that she couldn't divorce her husband because she feared he would retaliate if she tried to leave him and divide their assets. The woman told Muhammad that after her husband's murder, she intended to create an alibi by going to a different location, such as Boca Raton. Muhammad then asked her if anyone would suspect her of involvement in her husband's death, and she confidently replied that no one would accuse her. The detectives were stunned by the woman's casual tone as she discussed hiring a hitman to kill her husband. As they continued to listen, they were horrified by the woman's nonchalant attitude, which made it seem like she was discussing a routine business deal rather than arranging for someone's murder. At one point, she even showed Muhammad photos of her husband, which further revealed her callous disregard for human life. During the conversation, the woman made a stunning admission to Muhammad, revealing that she planned to pay a hitman to kill her husband. This confession was a crucial breakthrough for the detective, as it confirmed the woman's involvement in soliciting a murder. However, the detective knew that to build a stronger case, they needed to gather more evidence. The woman told Muhammad that she would withdraw $1,000 in cash and hand it over to the hitman later. After discussing the plan with Muhammad, the woman left the mobile gas station and drove home. The detectives followed her to gather information about her address. A records check revealed that the address belonged to Dahlia Doe, not Delilah as they had initially thought. With this new information, the detectives ran a background check on the vehicle Dahlia used to meet Muhammad at the gas station. This allowed them to obtain the registered owner's name, which was her husband, Mike Doe. To their friends, Mike and Dahlia seemed like a loving and happy couple. The two had met when Mike was browsing the internet at work, looking for something to do when he was feeling bored. Mike found a website that offered escort services and decided to hire one. This decision would have a profound impact on his life. When the escort arrived, Mike was immediately drawn to her physical attractiveness. He thought she was exceptionally beautiful, and he felt an undeniable attraction between them. As they spent more time together, they quickly developed a strong connection, effortlessly engaging in friendly conversations over the next few days. Mike and Dahlia's friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship after they spent a weekend together. They quickly realized their feelings for each other went beyond friendship. As a result, they became a committed couple. A few months into their relationship, they stumbled upon an engagement ring store, which led to a conversation about marriage, a topic they had previously discussed. Mike was drawn to the idea of spending his life with Dahlia, and decided to purchase a ring, symbolizing his commitment to their future together. Despite their relationship moving quickly, Mike was deeply happy and in love. Before meeting Dahlia, Mike had a troubled past. In 2001, he was sentenced to 2 years in prison in Broward County, Florida, for grand theft, fraud, and false telephone sales. At the time, Mike was struggling with drug addiction and desperation for money, which he later acknowledged was no excuse for his mistakes. Mike served his 2-year sentence and was given 28 years of probation. The court granted Mike a lengthy probation period to give him time to pay back the significant amount of money he owed. However, when Mike returned home, he was unsure of how he would repay the debt. Determined to settle his debt, Mike found a job as a cook at a local restaurant, earning $350 weekly, which was insufficient to make a notable dent in the substantial amount he owed. To improve his financial situation and secure an early release from probation, Mike sought a better-paying job. A friend offered him an office job near his home, allowing him to transition from cooking to email marketing. As Mike and Dahlia started dating, he eventually confided in her about his probation and the limitations it imposed. Mike explained that he required permission to leave the state while on probation. Dahlia, who had a strong desire to travel, expressed her wish to explore the world with Mike. To help Mike become debt-free, Dahlia offered to provide $91,000 if he paid the remaining balance, enabling them to clear the debt and start the life Dahlia had envisioned. Dahlia, a successful real estate agent, was financially stable and able to help her partner Mike pay off his debt and clear his name. Mike consulted his attorney to understand the process, and the attorney advised him to gather the necessary funds to be released from probation. To facilitate the payment, Dahlia and Mike agreed that she would send the money from her Bank of America account to the attorney. Dahlia informed Mike that she had transferred the funds, but when Mike followed up with the attorney, he was told that the payment had not been received. Mike waited a day and then asked Dahlia about the status of the transfer. However, Dahlia insisted that she had sent the money, leaving Mike frustrated and unsure about what was happening. Mike's concern grew, so he contacted his attorney again, only to be told that they still hadn't received anything. Dahlia claimed to have sent the money to the attorney, but couldn't explain the delay. 2 days had passed since the transaction, but the attorney remained without the funds. Mike asked Dahlia for proof of the transaction, needing the receipt to verify the details. However, Dahlia suspected foul play, suggesting the attorney might have stolen the money. She vowed to find the missing sum, while Mike sought to move past the misunderstanding. Meanwhile, a supervisor at the Bon Beach Police Department reached out to Sergeant Whitey Jean for assistance. Sergeant Jean met with a detective working on Dahlia Deo's case. The detective briefed Sergeant Whitey Jean on the case, revealing that Dahlia wanted to hire someone to kill her husband. The detective explained that Dahlia was waiting for a call from the would-be hitman and asked Sergeant Whitey Jean to pretend to be the hitman and arrange a meeting with her. Sergeant Whitey Jean agreed to help with the investigation and took on the role of the hitman. As the hitman, he contacted Dahlia and demanded a $3,000 advance and the key to her house. The detective had requested the key as part of their plan to make Dahlia believe the murder would happen at her home. However, Dahlia was unhappy about the payment demand and called Muhammad, the informant, to express her concerns. During the call, the detective overheard Dahlia's fears and worried that they might have scared her off. They feared that Dahlia might change her mind and find someone else to commit the crime. On August 3, 2009, Dahlia met with Sergeant Whitey Jean, who was posing as a hitman, in a CVS parking lot. However, Dahlia didn't bring the agreed-upon payment, which led Sergeant Whitey Jean to warn her that if he had to wait until after the murder to get paid, she would need to give him $7,000 in cash up front. Sergeant Whitey Jean explained to Dahlia that he would plan the staged break-in and murder of her husband Mike on Wednesday morning, taking advantage of the recent robberies in the area. He outlined his plan to make it look like a legitimate break-in, shooting Mike twice in the head to make it appear like a robbery gone wrong. Sergeant Whitey Jean also told Dahlia that he would contact her a few days after the murder, as he knew the police would be closely monitoring her activities in the aftermath of the crime. Sergeant Whitey Jean cautioned Dahlia that the delay was essential to avoid raising suspicions and maintaining the operation's secrecy. During their conversation, he gave her multiple opportunities to withdraw from the murder-for-hire plot. However, Dahlia expressed her unwavering commitment, stating she was 5,000% certain about her decision to have her husband killed. Dahlia provided Sergeant Whitey Jean with crucial details, revealing that her husband, Mike, followed a predictable morning routine, walking the dog at a specific time and leaving the house unlocked. This information was vital to the success of the plan. She also told the sergeant that she would create an alibi by going to the gym during the murder, ensuring her absence from the house when the crime would take place. The sergeant instructed Dahlia to arrive at the gym by 6 a.m. and informed her that he would enter her home at 6:30 a.m. After speaking with Dahlia, Sergeant Whitey Jean was taken aback by her extraordinary cruelty, having encountered few individuals in his line of work who exhibited a similar level of ruthlessness. The detective wanted to create a fake crime scene at Dahlia and Mike's home to see how Dahlia would react on the day of the alleged hit. To do this, they needed to know Dahlia's whereabouts. At 5:30 a.m., Dahlia told Mike she was going to the gym, which Mike found unusual since she had never gone that early before. However, he didn't think much of it and continued with his morning routine. The detective kept an eye on Dahlia to make sure she went to the gym and went inside. This confirmed that the plan could move forward. But before setting up the faked crime scene, the detective needed to fill Mike Dio in on what was happening. About 30 minutes after Dahlia left for the gym, loud banging noises were heard at Mike and Dahlia's house, prompting Mike to rush to the door. When he opened it, he was surprised to find several police officers standing there. Confused and worried, Mike asked them what was going on. The detective informed Mike that his wife, Dahlia, had tried to hire a hitman to kill him, but the hitman was actually an undercover cop. The entire situation was a setup to look like a murder-for-hire plot. Mike was in shock when the police told him that his wife had hired someone to kill him. The detectives took him to the police station, leaving his home to be staged as a crime scene with fake police tape and lights. The detectives then called Dahlia, telling her that they needed to question her about an incident involving her husband. When she arrived home, she found her house surrounded by police cars and crime scene tape. The detective told her that her husband had been murdered, and she broke down in tears. However, the detective noticed that Dahlia's reaction seemed unusual, as she didn't produce any tears. The detective began questioning Dahlia about suspects, trying to get her to confess to hiring the hitman. Dahlia claimed that her marriage was fine and that Mike's problems with probation and a stock fraud conviction might have led to his murder. Unbeknownst to her, Mike was watching from another room. The detective then revealed that they knew the truth behind the murder and brought in Sergeant Whitey Jean, who Dahlia claimed she didn't know. The detective arrested Dahlia for solicitation of murder, revealing that the hitman was an undercover cop. Mike was given the chance to confront Dahlia, but she refused to admit her guilt. Dahlia's trial took place on April 26, 2011, where Mike testified against her for 3 days. Her defense argued that the entire plot was a publicity stunt for a reality TV show, but Mike denied any involvement. Mike denied any interest in reality TV shows and claimed he had no involvement in Dahlia's alleged plot to kill him. He also stated he had no knowledge of public relations. After the trial, the jury found Dahlia guilty of solicitation to commit first-degree murder with a firearm, and she was sentenced to 20 years in prison. Mike was relieved by the verdict, but also felt a sense of closure, knowing justice had been served. However, Dahlia's attorneys appealed the conviction, citing a juror's remark about Dahlia poisoning Mike's Starbucks drink, which was not presented as evidence during the trial. The appellate court reversed the conviction, and a second trial was held. Despite the state's confidence in their case, the jury reached a hung verdict, resulting in a mistrial. A third trial was held, and Dahlia was again found guilty, this time receiving a 16-year prison sentence. Dahlia's defense team continued to appeal her conviction, but the Florida Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court declined to review her case. Her attorneys plan to file a motion with a federal judge to review the third trial for constitutional violations, which would be their last chance to secure a new trial. Despite her conviction, Dahlia has become a respected figure in prison, leading a Bible study group and earning praise from fellow inmates. She is separated from her young son, who lives with his grandmother, and deeply misses being with him. To our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Corey Richins. Eric Richins was born on May 13, 1982, and left a lasting impact on those around him. As a child, Eric was passionate about sports, actively participating in basketball, baseball, and soccer, which showcased his athletic talent and enthusiasm for staying active. Eric's true passion, however, was anything that involved being outdoors. He was an exceptional hunter, known for his impressive marksmanship, and had amassed an impressive collection of trophy animals from around the world. With his vibrant personality, Eric had the ability to light up any room he entered, spreading joy and laughter through his storytelling, playful pranks, and contagious laughter. As an adventure seeker, Eric lived life to the fullest in Utah, where he owned a wide range of motorized vehicles, including trucks, four-wheelers, and snowmobiles. He loved exploring the outdoors and relishing the thrill of adventure. Despite his love for fun and adventure, Eric was deeply committed to his faith, being a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Eric's family supported him on a 2-year mission trip to Mexico City, where he became fluent in Spanish. After high school, he attended the University of Utah, earning a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish in 2009. While working in construction, Eric frequently visited Home Depot, where he met Curry Darden. Over time, they developed a friendly connection, and Eric found himself attracted to her charming personality and beauty. However, he was too shy to approach her directly, so Eric asked a friend to help him get her phone number. One day, while Eric was shopping at Home Depot, his friend discreetly asked Curry for her number, telling her that Eric was interested in getting to know her better. Eric anxiously waited to see if his plan would work. Eric took the next step and called Corey to set up their first in-person meeting, unaware that it would be a life-changing event. As soon as they met, they clicked, and their first date marked the start of a romantic journey. As they introduced each other to their families, their bond grew stronger. Corey's family welcomed Eric with open arms, and Eric's family was equally impressed by Corey's character and how well she fit with him. Although Eric's sisters, Katie and Amy, were initially cautious, they soon warmed up to Corey and accepted her into their family. In 2013, Eric and Curry got married in an intimate ceremony, making their relationship official. After their wedding, Curry gave birth to their first child, Carter, followed by Ashton and then Weston, completing their ideal family. Eric naturally took to being a father, and his boys looked up to him. Eric took great pride in his sons' accomplishments, whether they excelled academically, athletically, or artistically. He consistently showed his support by attending their events and celebrating their successes. Later, Eric established a successful stone masonry business, which flourished due to his exceptional craftsmanship and attention to detail. Clients sought him out for his expertise in creating beautiful stonework. The business provided Eric and his family with financial security. Additionally, Corey, who worked in real estate, contributed to the family's income. Her entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with her knowledge of the local market, made her a valuable asset. She would buy homes, renovate them, and sell them for a profit. The Richins family enjoyed a wealthy lifestyle, symbolizing the epitome of success. However, their seemingly perfect life came to a sudden end on March 4, 2020, when Corey called 911 to report that her husband Eric was unresponsive. When paramedics arrived, they determined that Eric had already passed away. Devastated, Corey called her mother Lisa, who rushed to be by her side. Corey's brothers, DJ and Ronnie, were present too, overcome with tears and shock. The three of them struggled to come to terms with Eric's passing. Corey recounted that the evening had begun on a happy note, as they celebrated her latest real estate business milestone, the purchase of a luxurious mansion. Before retiring to bed, Corey had even prepared Eric's favorite drink, a Moscow Mule, mixing ginger beer with vodka. Corey went to bed around 9 p.m., but ended up sleeping in her 9-year-old son's room because he was having nightmares. Later, around 3 a.m., she returned to the bedroom she shared with Eric. When she touched him, she was alarmed to find him ice-cold and unresponsive. Despite trying to wake him, she couldn't rouse him and knew something was seriously wrong. As she waited for the paramedics to arrive, Corey remembered the dispatcher's instructions to perform CPR on Eric, which she claimed to have followed. The paramedics were baffled by Eric's cause of death, speculating that it might have been an aneurysm, given his apparent good health and lack of known medical conditions. However, further investigation revealed that Eric had complained to Corey about chest pains the night before his death, which initially reinforced the aneurysm theory. But the autopsy results were shocking. Eric's cause of death was ultimately determined to be a lethal dose of fentanyl. Fentanyl is a highly potent pain medication that can be extremely dangerous and even deadly when taken in excessive amounts. After Eric's death, a critical question remained: how did this substance end up in his system? From the start, Corey and her family quickly blamed Eric's recreational drug use as the reason fentanyl was present. Corey explained that Eric would take a THC-infused gummy every night to relax, as he preferred THC, the psychoactive ingredient in cannabis, to unwind. However, Corey, her mother, and brothers had concerns about the origin of these gummies, suspecting that Eric didn't always buy them from trustworthy sources, and instead purchased them illegally. Eric's family strongly disagreed with these claims, believing there was more to the story, and urged investigators to explore other possibilities. Despite trying to move on, Corey faced significant challenges, according to her brother Ronnie, as the absence of their husband and father left a huge gap in their lives, leading their three sons to act out due to the uncertainty surrounding his death. Corey, grieving and seeking comfort for her children, turned to a creative outlet to cope with her emotions. She wrote and self-published a children's book on Amazon titled Are You With Me?, which aimed to help kids understand and deal with the loss of a loved one. The book tells the story of a young boy struggling to come to terms with his father's death through illustrations and narrative. In the book, Corey portrayed Eric, her late husband, as a protective angel always watching over their son. Her mother, Lisa, praised the book, saying it brought some comfort to Corey and her grandchildren as they navigated their emotions and rebuilt their lives. However, detectives investigating Eric's death soon uncovered evidence suggesting foul play. Just weeks after Corey appeared on local Utah news stations promoting her book and sharing her grief, she was arrested and charged with her husband's murder on May 8, 2023. The community was stunned by the arrest, and the tragic turn of events transformed what was initially a heartwarming story of a grieving wife and mother into an unbelievable tale of betrayal and tragedy. Corey is accused of murdering Eric by poisoning him. Eric's family believes Corey deliberately put a lethal dose of fentanyl in the Moscow Mule she made for him on the night he died. However, Corey's lawyer claims that no fentanyl was found in the glasses at their home. Corey denies any involvement in Eric's death, saying she had no reason to harm him. Her mother, Lisa, was shocked to hear about her daughter's alleged involvement and told investigators that the couple was happy and had no reason to kill each other. But as detectives dug deeper, they found that Corey and Eric's relationship was not as perfect as they seemed. The couple had disagreements, and Corey, who had given up her career to be a stay-at-home mom, wanted to be independent. She was also growing increasingly frustrated with Eric's frequent hunting trips. According to Lisa, Eric was unfaithful in his marriage, and he confided in her about the affair along with Corey. To address their marital issues, Eric and Corey sought counseling. However, Eric's family denies that he ever cheated on her. Eric genuinely loved his sons and wanted to save the marriage. Despite his efforts, Eric was preparing for a potential divorce. He set up a secret trust with his sister Katie without revealing his intentions. The investigation uncovered that Eric had 6 life insurance policies worth $3 million. Furthermore, Corey forged Eric's signature on an additional $100,000 policy just 2 months before his death. It was also discovered that Corey allegedly stole money from Eric's personal accounts and misused business funds over several years. Contrary to her claims, Corey's house-flipping business was failing, according to Eric's family representative. Corey's company was deeply in debt, with millions of dollars owed. According to the spokesperson, Corey urgently needed cash, and a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage stated that she would not inherit the business assets if they were to divorce. However, if Eric were to pass away before her during their marriage, the assets would transfer to Corey. The spokesperson's claims were disputed by Corey's attorney, who maintained that the business was not in financial trouble. The attorney explained that the debt was a normal part of the house-flipping business, as it relied on lines of credit that would be repaid once the properties were sold. Corey's attorney clarified that the large debt figure mentioned was simply a result of regular business transactions. Corey's mother, Lisa, recalled that Eric had been supportive of Corey's business ventures, particularly when they bought the mansion where they were celebrating on the night of his death. In Heber Valley, Utah, a 10-acre estate with a mansion sat vacant since its construction in 2017, despite being close to popular ski resorts and Deer Creek Reservoir. This prime location offered endless opportunities for outdoor recreation. Corey, with the help of investors, bought the mansion with plans to renovate and transform it into a recreational hub. Her goal was to sell the property at a significant profit. After consulting an accountant, Corey and Eric discovered that they could potentially make a $12 million profit from the sale of the property, a substantial return on the initial $3 million investment. However, there's a discrepancy in Eric's involvement. While he seemed to be on board with the purchase, his family claims he was against it and had a heated argument with Corey about buying the mansion. Eric's family spokesperson claims that Corey gave Eric a drink containing fentanyl on the night of his death, and they believe this was not Corey's first attempt to harm Eric. They allege that in 2019, during a trip to Greece, Eric became violently ill after Corey gave him a drink. But Corey's brother Ronnie denies this, saying Eric was mistakenly given an alcoholic drink by a bartender while taking antibiotics. Eric's family also claims that Corey tried to kill Eric again on Valentine's Day 2022, a month before his death, when she brought him a sandwich that caused him to break out in hives and struggle to breathe. After Eric's death, Corey's behavior was questioned, including an incident where she allegedly attacked her sister Amy when she tried to open a safe containing a large amount of cash. Corey claimed she was defending herself to retrieve important documents, but was charged with assault and pleaded no contest in June 2023. Corey appeared in court for a 4-hour bail hearing, during which her attorney tried to convince the judge to release her on bail. Prosecutors presented 3 witnesses and evidence to argue that Corey had poisoned her husband. One of the witnesses, a cell phone expert, testified about Google searches found on Corey's phone, including queries about retrieving deleted iPhone messages, FBI's ability to find deleted messages, and the lethal dose of fentanyl. However, Corey's attorney countered that these searches were conducted after her husband's death, as Corey sought answers to the accusations against her. The prosecution also questioned the lead detective about potential sources Corey might have used to obtain the drugs that killed Eric. According to the detective, a woman named Carmen Labba, who claimed to work as a cleaner for Corey's business and home, told investigators about a meeting that took place in early 2022. During a call, Corey asked Carmen to buy fentanyl pills for an investor with a back injury. Carmen, who had a history of drug-related crimes and was on probation, agreed to the request. She later told detectives that she purchased 15 to 30 fentanyl pills and met with Corey to exchange them for cash. This exchange happened on February 11, 2022, just 3 days before Valentine's Day. Around the same time, court documents suggest Corey tried to poison Eric with a sandwich. Carmen also told detectives that Corey contacted her again, looking for even stronger drugs. She said Corey paid her with a check this time. Specifically, Carmen claimed that Corey wrote her a check for $1,300 about a week after Eric's death. However, Corey's attorney questioned whether the check could have been payment for cleaning services instead, and the detective acknowledged that this was possible. Corey's lawyer tried to discredit Carmen by pointing out her criminal history, including 4 first-degree felonies, and suggesting that she might not be a trustworthy witness. The lawyer claimed that Carmen may have been coerced into saying she sold drugs to avoid a long prison sentence, as the detective allegedly told her she would face serious consequences if she didn't cooperate. The lawyer also asked if there was any physical evidence to prove Carmen had bought drugs. The detective admitted that they found no text messages showing Corey asking Carmen for drugs, and no witnesses came forward to confirm they had seen the exchange. At the bail hearing, Eric's sister spoke to the judge, expressing her family's distress over Eric's death, and their fear that if Corey was released on bail, he would cause them further pain. Eric's sister asked the judge to keep Corey in custody, and the judge accepted her request. Meanwhile, Corey's family was upset because Corey was not allowed to leave jail before her trial and would have to stay there. They believed that Corey's time in jail was affecting her mental and physical health. In 2023, something serious happened to Corey while she was taking medicine given to her by the jail officials. She had a seizure and was quickly taken to the hospital from the jail. While Corey was in jail, she claimed that the officials gave her the wrong medication, which caused her to experience adverse effects. Fortunately, she recovered after being treated at a hospital. During her hospital stay, jail officials found a handwritten, unsent letter in her cell. They filed it into court records, claiming it was a note from Corey to her mother. Prosecutors argued that this letter provided additional evidence of Corey's intentions and motivations. In November 2023, they requested a no-contact order to restrict Corey's access to her mother and brothers, mainly due to the letter. Prosecutors claimed that the letter was evidence of witness tampering. According to prosecutors, the letter instructed Corey's mother on how her brother Ronnie should testify in court. Specifically, Corey allegedly wanted Ronnie to claim that Eric had admitted to obtaining pain pills containing fentanyl from Mexico during his trip abroad. The letter also instructed Ronnie to obtain text messages from Eric discussing his drug use. Corey stressed the need to link Eric's Mexico activities to his alleged drug involvement. Despite this, she vehemently denied accusations that a letter was an attempt to tamper with witnesses, claiming it was a work of fiction she wrote as a fantasy story. The judge ruled in her favor, as the prosecution failed to prove witness tampering. Currently, Corey and Eric's family are fighting for custody of their 3 sons, who are living with one of Eric's relatives. Although Corey is in jail, she still gets to see her sons through twice-weekly video calls. While her family has not been allowed private visits with the children, they regularly attend their sports events and practices, which are open to the public. If convicted of poisoning her husband Eric with fentanyl, Corey faces a sentence of 25 years to life. Multiple civil lawsuits have been filed against Corey, all related to Eric's estate. A central issue in these cases is the custody of Eric's children. Eric's family thinks that Corey's family is motivated by a desire to control Eric's assets, as whoever gets custody of the children will also gain control of his money. Corey's trial is scheduled to start in 2025. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Mary Catherine Higdon. Mary Catherine Higdon was born in 1994. Mary was a lively and cheerful child who loved making people laugh with her humor, impressions, and playful antics. She had a special bond with her pet frog, which she'd often take on walks around town. Mary was an outdoorsy person who enjoyed exploring nature and appreciating its beauty. She was also passionate about performing, often putting on shows for her family that showcased her creativity and imagination. Her family saw great potential in her and thought she had a bright future ahead. As she grew older, Mary developed a strong interest in firearms. She learned to handle guns responsibly and appreciated their power. She became a skilled marksman and continued to develop her skills. During her high school years, Mary met her partner, Stephen Freeman, who would become the love of her life. Stephen was born on January 1st, 1995, in Griffin, Georgia, where he grew up with his parents and brother. He had a happy childhood, surrounded by a loving family and many friends who described him as laid-back, kind, and helpful. Stephen enjoyed spending time outdoors and exploring nature. Stephen was particularly close to his parents, but he shared a special bond with his mother. When she graduated from college after returning to school, Stephen wrote her a heartfelt letter expressing his admiration for her achievement. In the letter, he praised her hard work and determination, saying he looked up to her every day and loved her more than words could say. Stephen had immense respect and appreciation for his mother, which was clear in the way he spoke about her. After meeting in high school, Stephen and Mary Catherine formed a strong bond, united by their passion for outdoor activities like hiking, camping, fishing, and hunting. Their shared love of nature became the foundation of their robust relationship. After graduating from high school, the couple decided to take the next step by moving in together in Griffin, Georgia. Living together in their own space thrilled Mary Catherine and Stephen. What's more, Stephen's mother welcomed Mary Catherine into their family, treating her like a daughter. Every Sunday, the couple would visit Stephen's parents for a big family dinner, a tradition that brought them all closer together and solidified Mary Catherine's place within the family. Stephen's friends were initially hesitant about his relationship with Mary Catherine, but as they got to know her better, they began to appreciate her positive influence on Stephen's life. They saw how happy and joyful she made him, and they admired her enthusiasm for the outdoors. Stephen and Mary Catherine had different occupations. Stephen worked as a metal worker, specializing in roof repairs. Mary Catherine, on the other hand, had two part-time jobs. She worked as a teacher's assistant at St. George's Episcopal School, a preschool in Milner, Georgia. Additionally, she was employed at a sporting goods store where she sold guns. Interestingly, one of Stephen's close friends, Thomas Skinner, was also a colleague of Mary Catherine's at the sporting goods shop. Mary Catherine learned about basic gun safety while working at a sporting goods store, which taught her how to properly hold, load, and shoot a gun. Similarly, Stephen was enthusiastic about firearms and owned several shotguns and rifles that he used for hunting and target practice. He also kept a Glock 42 handgun at home for self-protection. After 5 years together, Mary Catherine and Stephen were still living in their apartment in Griffin, Georgia, by the summer of 2018. However, their relationship took a tragic turn on August 1st when Mary Catherine made a distressing 911 call, marking the end of their high school romance. Mary Catherine frantically called the dispatcher, screaming that she had accidentally just shot her boyfriend. The police quickly responded to the emergency call and arrived at the apartment shared by Mary Catherine and Stephen. They found Mary Catherine in a state of panic, crying and hyperventilating as she knelt beside Stephen's motionless body. She repeatedly wailed that she could not lose him, her voice filled with anguish and desperation. As the police carefully moved Mary Catherine away from Stephen, they were able to assess his condition. They discovered that he had been shot in the chest, but miraculously, he was still alive. The police immediately called for an ambulance to rush Stephen to the nearest hospital. At the emergency room, a team of skilled doctors worked to save Stephen's life. Despite their best efforts, his condition continued to worsen. Unfortunately, the severity of his injury ultimately proved fatal, and Stephen succumbed to his wounds. After Stephen was taken to the hospital, Mary Catherine accompanied the police to the station for a formal interview. Mary Catherine explained what happened on the night she accidentally shot Stephen. She said she was giving him the gun because he normally kept it beside his bed for safety. However, she clarified that they never loaded the chamber of their guns at home. During the police questioning, officers detected the smell of alcohol on Mary Catherine's breath. As they pressed her for more information, her story changed. Initially, she said she handed Stephen the gun, but later claimed she tossed it to him. The police were skeptical of her changing story, knowing that a gun wouldn't fire randomly just because it was tossed. Someone had to pull the trigger. The police investigation revealed that Mary Catherine must have been pointing the gun directly at Stephen's body for the bullet to have struck where it did, given the location of his gunshot wound. During her interview, Mary Catherine admitted, "I did it out of anger." But unfortunately, the recording equipment malfunctioned at that exact moment, and her words were inaudible. Despite the missing recording, the police still had strong evidence pointing to Mary Catherine's intention to harm Stephen. At the couple's apartment, they found signs of an intense argument, including scattered food throughout the house. Additionally, police records showed that officers had responded to 5 domestic disturbance calls at the couple's residence in the past year. The police also discovered that the gun used in the shooting was loaded on the night of the incident, contradicting Mary Catherine's claims. These findings collectively led the police to conclude that Mary Catherine had intentionally shot her boyfriend Stephen. The police found cooking grease residue on the gun and magazine, leading them to believe Mary Catherine, who was cooking dinner at the time, had loaded the weapon. After Mary Catherine shot Stephen, the police questioned his friends to learn more about their relationship. According to his friends, Mary Catherine and Stephen's relationship was marked by constant fighting and toxicity. They reported that the couple frequently had intense, heated arguments. Mary Catherine was described as possessive and verbally abusive towards Stephen, with signs of mental instability that heightened the tension between them. Whenever Stephen tried to create distance by leaving their apartment, Mary Catherine would barrage him with relentless texts and calls, forcing him to block her. One of Stephen's friends revealed that Stephen had confided in him about Mary Catherine's history of threatening him with a gun. Specifically, she had pulled a firearm on him at least 3 times in the past. Despite this, Stephen chose not to report these incidents to the authorities because he was worried about Mary Catherine getting into trouble. Stephen's friends stressed that his top priority was always Mary Catherine's well-being, even when it put his own safety at risk. When Stephen's friends learned that Mary Catherine had accidentally shot him, they were skeptical because they knew she was knowledgeable about handling firearms. In fact, just 3 months prior to the shooting, Stephen had texted a friend to say that Mary Catherine was running wild outside, screaming and attempting to shoot both him and herself. Stephen told a friend that Mary Catherine had previously pointed a gun at him, but the latest time, her eyes frightened him, making him think she might actually pull the trigger. By July 2018, Stephen was exhausted with Mary Catherine's behavior and considered leaving her. In July, Stephen planned to secretly move to another town while Mary Catherine was out, without telling her. He was afraid of how she might react if she knew he was leaving. Just 2 days before Mary Catherine fatally shot Stephen, the police found a series of revealing text messages from July 30th. The conversation started with Stephen sending Mary Catherine a friendly message. "Good morning, beautiful. Don't forget." Mary Catherine responded with, "Have a great day." Stephen replied, "You too. Love you." However, the night of July 31st, Stephen avoided Mary Catherine's texts and calls, as they were in the middle of a fight, and instead spent the evening at a friend's house. On the night of August 1st, Mary Catherine was at home preparing dinner when she realized Stephen wasn't there. She contacted Stephen's mother, who told her that he was with his friend. Angry and feeling betrayed, Mary Catherine drove to his friend's house, determined to confront Stephen. When she arrived, she saw Stephen sitting in the passenger seat of his friend's truck. Mary Catherine pulled up alongside and began yelling at Stephen, who tried to calm her down, promising to come home soon. Although Stephen's friends claimed that Mary Catherine had pointed a gun at Stephen on multiple occasions, Mary Catherine vigorously denied these allegations. She maintained that she never pulled a gun on Stephen. However, Mary Catherine did admit to having threatened to take her own life with a gun on several occasions. In a later interview, Stephen's mother shared her insight, believing that one of the main reasons Stephen stayed with Mary Catherine for so long was because she frequently threatened to harm herself. Stephen was afraid that Mary Catherine would follow through on her threats if he decided to leave her. However, on the night of the incident that led to Stephen's shooting, Mary Catherine claimed that Stephen was the one who became aggressive and violent. According to her, Stephen threw the dinner she had prepared in her face. Mary Catherine stated that she only picked up the gun to defend herself and scare Stephen away. She wanted him to leave the apartment, but Stephen allegedly lunged at her, which frightened her. As she backed away, the next thing she knew, Stephen was bleeding from the chest. At the time of the shooting, Mary Catherine didn't tell the police her version of events because she was embarrassed to admit that Stephen had a history of violence towards her. She claimed that Stephen had hit her in the past and was controlling. She even recalled an incident where Stephen kicked her out of bed with such force that she hit her head on the door frame. However, Stephen's friends had a different perspective on their relationship. They claimed to have witnessed Mary Catherine being physically aggressive towards Stephen, stating that she had slapped him hard in the face. Mary Catherine's sister contradicted her account of their relationship, revealing that she had seen bruises on Mary Catherine's arm 2 weeks before Stephen was killed. When questioned, Mary Catherine confided in her sister that Stephen had grabbed her, causing the injuries. After investigating Stephen's death as a murder, the authorities charged Mary Catherine with murder, aggravated assault, and firearm possession during a felony. The prosecution offered her a plea deal, proposing a life sentence with possible parole if she pleaded guilty. However, Mary Catherine declined the offer, opting to stand trial and assert her innocence. At the trial, Mary Catherine maintained that she shot Stephen in self-defense, denying the charges against her. The trial, which began on June 17, 2019, nearly a year after Stephen's death, exposed the tumultuous relationship between Mary Catherine and Stephen. Mary Catherine's lawyers argued that she acted out of genuine fear, citing Stephen's history of violence and abuse. Mary Catherine testified that she was the victim of Stephen's controlling, manipulative, and dangerous behavior, which included physical, mental, emotional, verbal, and sexual abuse. She described being hit, humiliated, and degraded by Stephen on multiple occasions, and shared specific incidents where he smacked her around and verbally abused her. Mary Catherine explained that Stephen's constant threats and abuse left her feeling trapped, fearful for her life, and constantly walking on eggshells to avoid triggering his anger. She presented evidence in the form of text messages, including one where Stephen threatened to punish her, which she said meant he would physically harm her. Another text message showed Stephen's explicit threat to hit her back twice as hard if she defended herself. Mary Catherine's defense team also presented messages that supported her allegations of sexual assault, including a text where Stephen mentioned his red room, which she described as a place where they engaged in violent and aggressive intercourse. Mary Catherine testified that Stephen sexually assaulted her on 2 occasions, including one after they returned from a vacation to Walt Disney World, where he allegedly ignored her pleas to stop and intensified his efforts instead. The defense presented over 60 pages of text messages from Stephen, which showcased his pattern of verbal assaults and threatening behavior towards Mary Catherine. These messages included disturbing images and captions, such as one showing Stephen holding a dead fish, accompanied by the caption, "This is you." Another message showed Stephen's violent threats towards Mary Catherine after she cheated on him, where he wrote, "I'm going to wreck you for wrecking me." The defense also alleged that Stephen's drug and alcohol addiction contributed to his violent outbursts. Mary Catherine maintained that she was the one who ended the relationship, not Stephen, and that her actions on the night she shot him were a result of her desperation to escape the abuse. Mary Catherine claimed that Stephen had reacted violently to some news and had threatened to attack her, causing her to defend herself by grabbing a gun. She said the last thing she had told him before shooting was to get out of her house. However, Stephen's friends and family disputed Mary Catherine's allegations, describing Stephen as a friendly and caring person. Stephen's mother said she was unaware of any threatening messages her son had sent Mary Catherine and did not condone such behavior. Although she acknowledged that Stephen may have said some angry things, she believed he did not mean them. In court, the prosecution questioned Mary Catherine about her story, pointing out that she had never reported any alleged abuse by Stephen. They also presented evidence that Mary Catherine had searched for violent and explicit content online just hours before the shooting, which she claimed was to find ways to make Stephen happy. The prosecution argued that Mary Catherine had changed her story about the shooting multiple times, and that a text from Stephen suggested she had pointed a gun at him before. Additionally, Stephen's friends testified that they had witnessed Mary Catherine's violent behavior towards him. After 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Mary Catherine not guilty of murder, assault, and other charges. The verdict surprised Stephen's loved ones, who felt that justice had not been served. Later, the jurors revealed that they believed Mary Catherine had intentionally killed Stephen, but there was not enough evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. This lack of evidence made it difficult to determine whether the shooting was murder or self-defense.